afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the DelDOT 2021 Winter Workshop. Again, my name is John Cariano, and I'll be your host today. Again, we have another full agenda going to about 3:45 this afternoon, and a break planned for around 2:20. A couple reminders: if you requested a PDH certificate, a link will be sent to you after the workshop today, and that will be due to be completed by the close of business on Friday, February 19th. And lastly, if there's any questions for our presenters, if there's time, submit those through the Q&A feature in Zoom. Also, closed captioning is available. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter. It is Jason Arndt to give us an overview of the Bridge Management Program.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Arndt. Most of you probably know me. For those that don't, I'm the Bridge Management Engineer. You see the Bridge Management section, which does a few things. We're responsible for all the inspections of our bridges, dams, overhead sign structures, high mast lighting structures, and traffic signal support structures. We're also responsible for the maintenance programs for all those structures, except traffic signals. Those are responsibility of traffic section. We're responsible for completing load rate analyses for all of our bridges to ensure that they can safely handle all of our legal load vehicles. We're also responsible for reviewing and processing hauling permits for super load vehicles. These are basically vehicles that are over 120,000 pounds. And then last, sort of like the asset manager for the bridge program, more specifically myself, prioritizing bridge work needs, and then more recently working on developing deterioration models to forecast out bridge needs, performance measures, and budget needs. So today I'm going to talk about some 2020 highlights. More specifically, I'm going to talk to you about 2 bridge maintenance projects that Bridge Management was involved with this last year. And then last, I'm going to talk about our 2020 bridge performance measures. So the first maintenance project I want to talk about, Bridge 1384. It's up on Dutch Neck Road in Newcastle County. As you can see from the map here, I apologize, you're going to see the side of my face a lot because I'm looking at the screen over here. I'm going to use the mouse quite a bit, so you get a profile shot for most of this presentation. So here's the bridge right here, 384. Look over here, we have another bridge. It's right on Route 9, it's 386. 386 has tide gates attached to it. Bridge Design actually has a project to replace the tide gates. Should be starting early this summer. As part of that project, they actually have to close Route 9 down. Problem is, well, our Bridge 1384, it's actually currently was posted, sorry, for 8 tons. Back in May, I actually received a call from a resident. A resident lives on Dutch Neck Road. He was a farmer, and he had got wind of that Bridge Design project. Or Bridge Design had a project there on SR9. They're going to be closing for a while they replace the tide gates. Being that we have a bridge that's posted for 8 tons, he actually has land on both sides of the bridge. He was a chicken farmer, and then he also, I don't know if he grew hay or actual food crops, but he had a farm on the other side of property on the bridge. So concerns of being able to get to his farming operations while 9 was closed. They typically come in up Route 9. Mouse is a little delayed here, so I apologize for that. But for this, if you had to get to this portion of the road, you had to come up Route 9, come in this back entrance here. Can't really see it from this map. Kind of comes up, comes around here along the canal, comes out. So with Route 9 closed, that means they would have to shoot up Route 1, pay the tolls, and then shoot back down around 9 to hit the entrance. Quite a bit of detour, and then definitely additional expense paying the tolls. Vice versa, if he had to get to the south side of the bridge to his other farm fields, he could no longer just kind of go out the back way, down and around here, out Port Penn to his road. He would have to go back up 9, out to Route 1, again, a longer detour, additional cost incurred there. Some of the farm machinery isn't necessarily, you want to be driving that down Route 9. There were a couple other farmers on this road too that shared similar concerns. They had reached out to me and it made me aware of the situation. So I started looking into it. My first thought is that there's no way we can, first thought is we probably have to replace the bridge because it's an 8-ton posting. I thought there's no way that we can get a contract out and get the bridge replaced before bridge design's project. So next I started looking at it, well, is there something we can do to maybe strengthen the bridge? So after looking into it a little bit, I realized that, this is a good candidate for actually pouring basically a brand new concrete slab on top of the existing structure. And I designed that slab to actually take the full live load and thereby reducing or eliminating the posting. At first I was thinking we could do this through Canal District's structure maintenance contract. I started thinking about that more, and I knew that even doing that, that might be tight to get it done by the 1-year time frame. And I started thinking, I was like, this location is great. It's a relatively low ADT here. Maybe this is something that Canal District could possibly do and take on. And so I reached out to Canal District, told them what I was thinking. And usually when I reach out to districts and try to get them to do something, I get probably 1 of 3 responses. One's an immediate no. One's they just look at me like I have 3 eyes on my head, and then the other is, oh, sure. I didn't exactly get a sure, but I got a maybe. So we met out there and discussed this more, and then Canal District basically agreed to take it on. So what you're seeing here, this is pictures of the older bridge. You can see the 8-ton posting sign. I see the bridge in the background there. This is just an elevation view of the bridge. It's just a small, roughly 13-foot span bridge. It was a RC reinforced concrete frame structure. So I went ahead and designed the slab. Maybe a little hard to see here. This first part here is the original reinforced concrete top slab of the frame culvert. It's kind of weird when they actually constructed this. They construct a little bit on an arc, transverse direction. It's a little weird that they did that. Then you can see the proposed concrete slab on top, which was originally just all asphalt and fill material. So I did design, had our load rate engineer check it, and kind of worked up some sketches, and I actually had someone from Bridge Design help out and draw the schematic here in CAD, so it's a little more detailed. That's how I give it to the field crew. Basically, I needed to get an 8.5-inch slab to work, and we just made it. We were trying to do this so we didn't have to raise the road. We didn't want to have to raise the road and then have to raise the approach roadways, and we didn't want to have to deal with drainage, so it worked out that we were able to do this within the existing elevation limits of the bridge. So we, the minimum thickness of the slab was 8.5 inches. The strength of the concrete was 4.5 KSI. We used 60 KSI rebar. We used epoxy coated rebar. We did number 6 bars at 6 inches, the longitudinal direction, which is the main carrying, reinforcing, carries the load. We had number 5 bar at 12 inches in the transverse direction. Really, that just distributed the load throughout the concrete and kind of up the concrete active 1. So I worked up the detail, gave it to Canal District. We kind of went from there. Talking with the farmers, they explained what we're trying to do. They said if we do this, they prefer to try to do this kind of in the downtime of their agricultural season, which is kind of like late October and November. So that's what we shoot for. It actually worked good for the district as well for that time frame because it's right before plow season and for the holidays. So on Monday, October 19th, the road was closed. They started digging up the asphalt. The next day we finished that, cleaned up the deck. And they started doing the form work for the slab and started laying out the rebar mat. On Wednesday the 22nd, we poured concrete. When we poured the concrete, we took some additional samples I think we did a test at 7 days, compression test to see what we had strength-wise. We did one at 14-day. We also did one at 21-day. It was actually just slightly less than the 4.5 KSI that we were trying to get open the bridge on. So just some quick photos. That's when we removed the asphalt, exposing the top concrete, putting out the rebar mat. See the formwork. That's where we're actually pouring. Touches. There, that's just kind of curing. Final product there. They did some rail repairs and painted the rail too. Looks much better, but we were able to unpost the road now, so there's no posted restriction. Also improved the condition of the bridge. We did it all for about $16,000 in materials versus probably about $90,000 to $100,000 if we had to go through a contractor. So the next project, we had an emergency scour repair we had to do on Bridge 76 on SR 100. The scour was found during an inspection. It's a small structure, masonry abutment. It's actually a concrete slab on top. Just some pictures of the bridge, channel. So this is scour sketch sheets, scour drawings that were taken. Basically, we got undermining of the masonry abutment, and we lost a lot of stones of the masonry abutment. This kind of does a little better picture. The top is the downstream elevation view, which is typically where the scour would occur. You can see where it's undermining the actual masonry substructure. This is kind of a profile view of actually looking at the abutment. We actually got a little bit of a void. We had a lot because of the undermining. Some of the masonry units dropped out. This is some pictures. This is actually once they deep water to make the repair, but you can see the extent of the scour and the big void in the masonry abutment there. That scour pole is about 6.5 feet in height. Where that top of that scour pole is where the channel bottom used to be. So I mean, a lot of scour. And this is not, this isn't Sussex County. This is up north where there's a lot of gravel and maybe not boulders, but decent sized rock that make up the channel bed. It's a relatively small creek. Picture the damage. This is the other side of the other abutment. For our scour repair, basically we were going to pour concrete, basically underpin everything, hold everything in place, and then at the end of the concrete, just place riprap to bring it back up to the existing channel bed. And place some riprap along the downstream embankments as well. This just kind of shows the yells of the concrete that we're pouring there. We had lack of time, so we didn't really have time to do this in CAD. Wanted to get going on this. This was the finished product just before we opened back up the water. But this is basically where the channel bed was prior to the scour damage. So basically, the inspector found this on Wednesday. We went out there on Thursday, verified the condition, realized, hey, we should close this. Immediately met everybody out on site, traffic, environmental, North District contractor, even Secret Service stopped by. That was interesting. And by Friday, had the drawings to the contractor, discussed a few things. Monday, they closed the mobilized and started dewatering. Poured concrete on Wednesday. Thursday was Thanksgiving. By Friday, they were able to open up the road. So within 9 days, we had the emergency repair done and opened up the traffic. So it was a huge success. Many thanks to traffic, environmental, Anna, and Dan for helping us out. Expediting the permits. And last, go over the 2020 bridge performance measures real quick. So what you're seeing here, if you just focus on the all DelDOT bridge column, we have 1.6% of our bridges or less are in poor condition. And we have almost 84% in good condition. Just to kind of paint a better picture here, this is the last 10 years. Red means bad, yellow means good. You can see back in 2011, we were at almost 7.5% poor for our bridges, and we were just a little less than 73% good. Oh, you can't see it. Oh, I can't see it. Up to 2020, more recently, we're at 1.6% poor, and then it's almost 84% good. So we've come a long way. Still have some work to do with a long way for our bridge program. I guess with that, I'll open it up to any questions, comments.
We don't currently have any questions, but if you want to stick around for a couple minutes in case any come in, feel free to submit questions through the Q&A, or you can email Jason. But we're going to move on to our next presenter.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jason. Brad Damtoff will now be providing an update on the I-95 and SR 896 interchange project.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm Brad Damtoff. I'm a project manager in Project Development North. And I'm going to give you guys an update on our 95 and 896 interchange project, and a little bit of background as well. So because this is a pretty complex project, we also have a very robust consultant team helping out with the design. So I'll just go through that real quick. And thank you to everybody who is involved move this design along. So we have Century Engineering, who's our design lead, GPI, who is working as our structures lead, Wallace Montgomery, with traffic and also designing some of our structures, McCormick Taylor, doing our lighting, detours, and signing and striping. Rabinsky, helping out with the ITMS and the TMP, with geotechnical. We also have Remline helping out with our graphics displays and mailings. So this graphic shows the existing conditions. Anyone who's driven this interchange has probably noticed a lot of these. But first, let's focus on the blue areas, which are crash clusters. There really are two categories of crash clusters that we've noticed. The first are based on geometric deficiencies. So if you look at the three ramps there in blue, ramp J, ramp D, and ramp C, those are where we're seeing rollover crashes. On ramp J, that curve radius does not meet existing design standards. So that's the reason that we see some rollover crashes there. And ramp D and ramp C both originally had toll plazas. So you'll notice that they have tangent sections between the curves. What happens in these areas is you have motorists come out of the first curve, speed through the tangent, and then come to another sharp curve. So we also see some rollovers there. The big crash cluster here in the second category of crashes is really related to the operations. So anyone who's ever traveled southbound on 896, trying to get to northbound 95, or gotten off from southbound 95 to travel to southbound 896, has probably noticed the weave condition, which is shown in the middle of your screen in the purple. What happens there is you have both of those movements, which are two of our heaviest movements at the interchange, jockeying for position. And aside from the crashes that are caused by that in that weave area, it'll also cause traffic to back up along ramp C there. And that traffic eventually, especially in the PM peak, backs up onto southbound 95 across ramp A. And we see that queue extend up to 2 miles sometimes in the PM peak. So these are the big issues there. We actually, in our 3-year traffic study, period actually saw 527 crashes over that 3 years. So if you do the math there, that's about a crash every other day. So this is our preferred alternative. I want to first start out by pointing out some of the constraints that we faced early on. In 3 of our quadrants, we have cultural resources. So in that northwest quadrant, we have the Welsh Tract Baptist Church, which is on the historic registry. In that southwest quadrant, we have Iron Hill Park. And in the southeast, we have the Cooches Bridge Historic District. And also, just to round it out, in the northeast quadrant there, we have the Christina River kind of constraining us. So our preferred alternative actually was able to keep within the state right away and avoid those, especially the cultural resources there. If you look at the inlay in the bottom right there, you'll see the overview of our proposed design. We're going with a double flyover option, which completely eliminates that weaving movement. So I'll walk you through the individual movements of that. So our first ramp is the southbound 95 to northbound 896 ramp. This ramp is essentially the same. It'll be the same driver feel as existing. One difference, and we've already implemented this through an interim project, is that 896 northbound over the bridge over 95 has been reduced to a single lane. That allows this movement to have a dedicated lane rather than trying to yield to vehicles coming over 95 on the bridge. Our second ramp and the first of the 2 flyovers is our southbound 95 to southbound 896 flyover. This ramp will have bridges over 896, over 95, and then it'll tie in back south of the interchange heading toward Old Baltimore Pike. Our second flyover is the ramp D from southbound 896 to northbound 95. This has bridges over 95, over ramp C, over ramp J, and it will tie in east of where ramp J will end up tying in as you approach the 72 overpass. So ramps F, G, and H, these are your ramps from 896 to southbound 95, and your exit ramp from 95 to 896. And these are roughly are very similar to the existing configuration, just altered to accommodate the remaining geometry at the interchange. And finally, our ramp J, as I mentioned before, this is the one that has the curve that doesn't meet the current design standards. So we've tightened that curve up a little bit and also added 2 lanes to accommodate the volume. The existing is only 1 lane. And as I mentioned with the ramp D, this will merge prior to where ramp D merges in. So that eliminates another conflicting movement as those 2 are merging onto 95. So when you get into a flyover design, you're going to be heavy into the bridges and structures. So this project actually will have 12 bridges that we are working on, whether it's a widening or rehabilitation, a single span, or a curb girder. So we have 5 widenings or rehabilitations. Those are shown in green. We have a single culvert extension shown in yellow, 1 new single span bridge, which is up to your upper left in blue, and then 5 curb girder bridges, which are shown in purple. You'll notice that the orange outlining several of the ramps as well. We have over 3,300 linear feet of retaining wall on this project. So very heavy in structures. So one of the innovative things that we added to accommodate a lot of public requests, there really isn't a existing pathway over 95 in this area. So we were able to actually tie a shared use path along the outside of ramp D to connect that shared use path from Welsh Track Road south down to Old Baltimore Pike. So we have an estimated total project cost currently at $159.5 million. That includes design, right-of-way, and construction. And we were fortunate enough last June to receive an infra grant from the US DOT for construction in the amount of $56.8 million. So we definitely thank the team and our federal partners for helping us through that process. So as Jason's presentation yesterday described, we are going to be going into the CMGC contracting method for this project. For this specifically, it made a lot of sense because we're able to bring in the contractor to bring their experience and innovation to some of the more complex parts of the project, especially with construction phasing. As I mentioned, this is a huge traffic, a very dense traffic area. So we hope to minimize impacts to the traveling public. Bringing that contractor in during design will allow us to look at opportunities for running different processes and different of the phases concurrently, and also maybe pulling out some smaller pieces of the project for some advanced work packages. As I mentioned, we also have the very complex and numerous structures. Having a contractor on board for that, we may be able to adapt some of the elements to kind of cater to the strengths of the contractor that is chosen as our CMGC. We also have some pretty complex soil conditions at the site. So if you look at this plan from the original interchange, the Christina River used to be what's shown in the light blue, and it was actually, as part of that project, redirected to the dark blue. If you were to overlay our existing design over this, a lot of our features end up right where that the fill of the old riverbed is. So bringing the CMGC on board will also help us potentially look into their experience and their innovative practices for ground improvements there. And we'll also be able to use them for some of the other complex design elements, such as our wetland mitigation, tree mitigation, and borrow sourcing. So looking at our schedule, we originally started this design back in August of 2016. And if you fast forward to today, we have a big month coming up in March with our semifinal plans being distributed, and also our selection of our CMGC contractor. And we are shooting for construction in October of 22 and expect that to last approximately 3 years. I mentioned the infra grant earlier, so you can see that back in June of 2020 that was awarded. The big thing with that is we were able to pull up funding from fiscal year 25, so that would have been late 24 when we would have started construction, up to October of 22. And that's a real big thing when you're looking at a crash every other day over those 2 years of savings. So that's a brief update on this very large project that I think we're all very excited about. So thank you all for listening in, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Brad. We do have a question, but I'm going to ask you to sit down with Bob and type a response to that. Any more questions, feel free to submit them through the Q&A. With that, we're going to turn it over to Eric Simo, our utility coordinator, to provide us an update on the utility section and educate us on small wireless permitting.
Thanks, John. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Eric Simo. I'm the utility engineer here at the department. I was asked to come in and give a brief update of our section. So I'm going to go over the small wireless permitting update, give some insight into our utilities assessment, and quick update on the utility manual. So small wireless started back in 2018 in response to legislation that was passed, which required us to move forward with permitting small wireless facilities within the right-of-way. These entities are to be treated like utilities, though they're not public utilities. It is administered through my side of the world. We utilize JMT as our consultant, so they handle the permitting reviews and the field inspections associated with the work, as opposed to most other, well, all other utility permitting is handled through the public works offices in our districts. So this is a little bit different, but we wanted to hold on to the consistency that's needed for the Delaware Code and the wireless piece. To date, we have 98 permits authorized statewide, and 62 are constructed. So there's a table at the bottom here to provide a little bit more breakout for everybody. Essentially, most of the permit locations are co-locates, which means the wireless providers are utilizing existing utility poles. There is a caveat to that. As most people on the utility side know, whenever something happens to an existing pole, that means it's actually replaced, but it's replaced roughly in its existing location. We still refer to that as a co-locate. They're not adding a new pole into the system. The focus area on the wireless side is for highly populated or high demand areas. So as you can see with the map, all the different pins indicate where we've received permit submissions. So the focus is really in Wilmington, in and around Wilmington, and then down at the beaches. And we're only seeing permits for 4G. So they're trying to build out their 4G network. We haven't really seen submissions for 5G, although that's what you hear in a lot of discussions, is we need to build out our 5G network. We've run into some challenges with municipalities, so we may have some changes coming with how we deal with permitting within the municipalities. Sorry. So jumping into the FHWA review, we started the Delaware review of the utility side started last year in response to a nationwide study that FHWA's headquarters had conducted. Nationwide, there were some areas of concern that were brought up. So now each individual states are kind of going through assessments to see how each state ranks up to these nationwide concerns. The focus area for this review was on utility investigations, utility agreements, relocations, estimates, schedules, construction bid packages, the vouchers and oversight and inspection, and then cost and time increases. So we had some Delaware specific objectives that were added into our assessment. Not going to go through all of these, but we saw the need to track utility delays and ways to improve from both the design and the construction sides. So there's been not just the utility section, but we've had input from the construction side and from the environmental side. So we're pulling other sections into this discussion as need be. At this point, all the information's been collected. We've had a list of sample projects that we used as part of this assessment, and the information is kind of being finalized into the final report. We anticipate that'll come out this year, and we do anticipate there's going to be areas of improvement which are identified. So the last piece I wanted to touch on is the utility manual. So folks know our utility manual hasn't been updated since 2008. We have been working on that over the years. We've run into some hiccups. So we're hoping to have the updated revisions out to stakeholders for review in the next few months, so that then we can try to set up meetings and finalize everything over the next year and hopefully get the new version up and running so everybody can start using that. So with that, that was my quick update. If folks want more, please join us next week for our utility summit on the 23rd. There is a registration link here, so come for all the fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Have any questions at this time? So next we will focus on e-construction. We'll be talking about e-ticketing and Unifier. So we're going to have Billy Sweeney and Mark Bucklew present on this topic.
Thank you, John. So my name is Mark Bucklew. I'm presenting on e-ticketing. Hopefully Billy gets here soon. Transfer something to Unifier. Not prepared for. I have faith in Billy will be here. We're going to talk a little bit about e-ticketing. So if you're not quite familiar with what e-ticketing is, it's basically the same information that you would get in a material ticket, paper ticket, hot mix, concrete, etc., but in an electronic format. The department has been looking at how to implement this across the state. It's been a struggle for departments across the country with how to implement this statewide. We want to talk briefly about our efforts here at the department and what our goal is long term. When I talk about departments struggling with this across the country, there's a lot of e-ticketing platforms available. And when you start looking at each individual product, different material suppliers can obtain different products. And what happens is if every single hot mix plant has a different hot mix e-ticketing platform, that would require us to, on our phones, download that app. And so what you would have is 5 different apps for 5 different hot mix plants, which would be an absolute chaos mess for us in our workflow. So I looked for a quote that would be a little more inspirational, and I came across this one from the leading founders of Apple. It's a little more apropos to what we're talking about here. We ran a pilot with a company called Haul Hub. Now, during this pilot, this is exactly the workflow we're looking to build with our e-ticketing platform. But with Haul Hub, what basically happened is each individual, whether it be inspector or plant inspector, or if you're an area engineer, you would have the list of projects that you are in charge of. You would be able to click on that individual project. Next screen comes up would be the different materials that are available in the e-ticketing format. This particular pilot doesn't have it really broken out into materials, but you can see from this example, it shows different hot mix types, BCBC, Type C, that were done under this pilot. Now, if you go and as you're in this screen, you can click on certain days of materials that were delivered, say December 4th. So when you click on that date, it shows on December 4th, you had 111 tons of material delivered. There's also a column for rejected loads. If you got a bad load of material, there's a column for waste. You know, run into situations where they use only half of the load. So it gives you a chance to go in there. There'll be a field available for you to write notes in there. Only used half a load, deduct the other amount. When you click on an individual ticket itself, it'll load down into the time that the material was loaded into the vehicle, into the truck. See how long it was in transit. Now, unfortunately, this ticket shows that it was accepted at 3:50 which is like 6 hours after it's loaded, which is more of a case the inspector didn't accept the load until later on that day, which is fine. But these tickets will have all the same information that you typically have. We'll be able to load all the gross vehicular weights in, so anything overloaded or overweight, the trucks can be deducted automatically. You'll have the driver, the type of material, everything that's in the normal paper process would be on the electronic format. And that's really the process we want to maintain. Is we're not trying to disrupt the paper format. It's more of let's create the same paper process but in electronic format. When I talked about the different material suppliers and different e-ticketing platforms available, one of the struggles departments have is how do we create one central location? And that's what we're working with the company right now. We'll have a central hub where all those tickets and all that information will go into our centralized platform, which the department would own. And from there, we'd be able to take that information and push it directly into Unifier. And that's one thing that's really key for us, is that it's going to integrate with Unifier process that we already have. It would be a seamless transition. We will have to be storing paper tickets anymore, archiving paper tickets, but everything will be able to store permanently on the Unifier drive. That'll be our process for document. That I'm going to hand it over to Billy. He's going to talk about some of our process we'll be going through with Unifier and what we're doing moving forward.
Thanks, Mark. So like Mark said, I'm just going to kind of go over what we've done in Unifier to date. Just kind of my yearly update for everybody. So we've been using Unifier since April of 2017. We've run approximately 250 projects in. I think this morning we might have crossed over that 250 project mark. Getting, from running completely through Unifier. Last I checked, we were right around 450 users. That's both state of Delaware employees, contracted employees like consultants, and then also our contractor partners as well. We've also got a couple of federal highways folks that are beginning to use it for the change order process and involved from that aspect as well. So we're kind of quickly, or I guess, branching out to more than just DelDOT folks, and kind of showing the power that we can put out there, when it comes to so just some numbers. Again, trying to show you some stats. Inspector daily reports. So we were using it in April 2017 when we started. We've done around 95,000 IDRs. And that's individual records. So if you think that each IDR is a couple pages, sometimes 3 pages, depending on how long it is, you can start to see we're right around 300,000 sheets of paper we've probably saved in the last 4 or 5 years or so. A lot of these IDRs really came on within the last 2 years. Since the first year was really only about 15 or 20 projects that really ran through it. So we're really starting to ramp up, that usage, and the more projects get in, more, the more we'll see, more savings. We'll start to see more records put into the system. Price approvals. We were doing price approvals. We started that in July of 2017. These are just adding items into projects for Unifier, and then actually identifying what the official price is on the item and what the agreement is with the contractor. We've done about 1,270 records. I think we might be a little bit closer to 1,300 now since I did the slides. Again, same thing. You're thinking about paper savings and stuff like that. When some of these price approval letters can be 2 or 3 pages, again, you can start to see where we're really potentially saving a lot. Next on the list was change orders. We've been using that since May of 2019. Again, completely in Unifier, about 830 records for that one, to a total of about $56 million in change orders processed through Unifier, and that's both positive and negative. So it's not just, obviously, so there's constant numbers in there. Estimates, May of 2019 as well, about 670 records. Estimates have been processed through Unifier since then. and we've totaled about $286 million in estimates that have gone through the system. And in both of those instances, change orders and estimates, we are integrating with PPT in order to send data back to PPT for use in other places. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things we had to make sure that we didn't really lose. Was that spot in order to share data to applications that are already reading. Some processes. This is just a slide. I'm not going to read through it. To be honest with you, it's you know, we've got quite a bit of business processes out there that we've we've created, both kind of main business process or the major ones in the support BP. So you know, like I've got here. I mean, we're trying to hit as much in the e-construction realm as we can. And then as we're doing some of those kind of main processes, we've got to build support BPs in order to handle, you know, getting the information to those main processes that, you know, in order to do things the right way. So we are working in both the design and the construction phase. So we're not just in the construction side. So you can kind of see some things here. This is some stuff that we've got coming up, you know, hopefully here within the next maybe 6-8 months. But like I said, design and construction. So, you know, you've got a lot of possibilities here of building the documents, you know, the document structure, document management system ahead of time before it gets into construction, which, you know, I know for some of our consultant inspection has been a little bit of a struggle. So, you know, starting to build that stuff in design, moving it into construction, or having it available for when it gets into construction, I think it's going to be pretty important. There have been some other sections in the department that are showing some interest. You know, as most everybody's probably heard, we're beginning to migrate away from P6 here over the next year. So that's going to bring a lot of sections that are using P6 in some way, shape, or form. They're going to be having to use Unifier in its place, you know, for providing things like statements, you know, gathering information, you know, trying to get specific information about dates maybe related to when things are happening. You know, that kind of whatever we're using P6 for now, you know, so those folks are going to be there. I've got meetings with the civil rights group scheduled. Audit has had some interest in some of the stuff that they're doing. And of course, with our e-construction effort, they obviously have to be involved in getting access just so that they can do their job. We've had discussions with right away. I'm beginning to talk with you know, the materials section on some of the stuff that they're trying to do and trying to find places to put things. And I think that it's you know, Unifier is really the place to do it, in my opinion. Yes, hopefully we can kind of move into those other sections. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks.
All right, thank you guys. I think most of the questions were already answered. That being said, we can move on to the next presenter. Heidi Croft will be presenting an update on the environmental stewardship structure and current goals.
Thank you, John and Bob and everyone who worked to make the winter workshop virtual this year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Croft. I manage the environmental stewardship section here at DelDOT. And several of my team is going to present later on this afternoon and provide some program-specific initiatives that we've been working on over the past year. But I just want to give you a brief update from our section overall. So first up, one of our accomplishments this past year has been to update and sign our new noise policy. Just to highlight a few of the changes, the definition of benefited receptor was updated. Under the feasibility analysis, it was adjusted to require that 75% or more of impacted receptors receive a 5 decibel reduction in highway traffic noise. And under the cost effectiveness test, we updated the cost per receptor to reflect inflation, and then set a cost per square foot of barrier at $53 square foot to provide consistency throughout all of our noise analysis throughout the department. A few clarifications were made in the fall, this past fall, and a finalized signed version of the noise policy should be posted to the DRC relatively shortly. So keep an eye out for that. John mentioned yesterday some manual updates. This is something that the environmental group has had on our radar for quite some time now. Instead of putting out a 200-page manual on environmental processes and requirements that I know everybody would have read to cover, we decided to take a different approach to this and instead are putting out a series of guidebooks. So these will be short, topic-specific, to be used for designers, staff, consultants, and even the public to get a sense of what goes into different phases of design and what our different requirements may be. So those highlighted in yellow, those are the first four that we're working on. So purpose and need, our categorical exclusion, NEPA documents and reevaluations, and then section 4F and section 6F. And these four should hopefully be wrapped up sometime this year. And then after that, we will be tackling a guidebook on noise to partner with the signed updated noise policy at the request of Federal Highway. So look for all of those. Once completed, any guidebooks will be posted to the DRC as well as to our environmental website. So this is our new environmental stewardship website. For those of you who have been around the department, we've had a website dedicated to archaeology and historic preservation for several years now, but this sort of covers all of the aspects under the environmental and NEPA umbrella. So NEPA, noise, wetlands and permitting, our endangered species. So I encourage you to take a look. The website is up at the top there. It's pretty brief, but it gives you a sense of what we do as a section overall. And then finally, just to bring to your attention that we've done some restructuring of the staff within environmental stewardship over the past 6 months. So under myself now are 3 supervisors who oversee the various regulatory programs. So Anna Smith oversees the environmental permitting. So that's our state DNREC wetlands permits, and then Army Corps of Engineers, as well as wetland delineation work. Christy Bonnewell oversees our day-to-day NEPA program, as well as environmental resources, such as our rare, threatened, and endangered species coordination and our wetland mitigation. And John Martin is relatively new to the department, and he oversees our Section 106 compliance and cultural resources. So if you have any questions at all on one of those subspecialty areas, feel free to reach out to one of them. I'm always available as well and can certainly point you in the right direction. So as I said, keep it brief. And you will be hearing from several of my team later this afternoon. Thank you.
And thank you, Heidi. At this time, we don't have any questions, so move on. So one of Heidi's wetland specialists, Van Adams, will present on environmental permitting.
Cool, thank you, Heidi. My name is Van Adams, and we're going to be talking about environmental permitting today. Oh, perfect. All right, so who am I? Like I said before, my name is Van Adams. I am in the environmental stewardship section. I deal with obtaining permits for maintenance and operations, and as well as capital projects. Some other things I do include delineations, stream stats, and I'm a beaver dam removal expert. We're currently not authorized to use explosives yet, but hopefully we do soon. Heidi's looking at me, she's shaking her head saying, no, we can't use explosives, so. Permits, that transitions. Permits, what and why? Permits are needed to do work in federal and state jurisdictional lands. If you touch water or wetlands, you're probably gonna need a permit. That's just how it works out. For example, if you don't get a permit, there was a case in Mississippi where a contractor filled in 260 acres of wetlands. They got 10 years, about 9-10 years in jail, and fined $4.8 million. And some quick math, break that down, that comes to about 14 days in jail per acre, or $18,000 per acre filled in as well. Again, each one's different, so who knows what's gonna happen. And you're probably wondering to yourself, state and federal agencies care? Yes, they do. There's laws and regulations put into effect. DENREC has Delaware Code Title 7, Chapter 72, which deals with conservation and natural resources. And the United States Army Corps of Engineers has Section 404 of the Clean Water. There's a picture of a bog turtle right there. Everyone knows that's a good joke that goes on in our section. Good thing these permits and agencies have different permit applications and requirements for each permit. It is my job to deal with it, so you do not have to. Why you should care. Wetlands produce food and habitat for a variety of different things, such as shrimp, blueberries, cranberries. So if you like your shrimp, you like your blueberries, protects your wetlands. It helps moderate climate, global conditions. Wetlands can store carbon. Carbon is a greenhouse gas. Create more wetlands, reduce your global climate change. It can improve drinking water quality from runoff. So if we improve drinking water quality using wetlands, state agencies don't have to spend money on reducing the runoff and pollutants into the water. They can spend it on something cool, maybe some pay increases for us, who knows? Not up to me. Also some shoreline protection, reduce floods, all that other good stuff. Types of permits. So everyone's favorite is no permit. You guys are not touching anything jurisdictional. You don't need a permit to do anything, well, environmental permit at least to do anything. So you're good to work. Then you have your nice, easy, simple FYI permits. It's basically just a little email to the agency saying, hey, we're gonna do this, we're gonna replace this pipe, no major impacts. Those are a pretty quick turnaround, usually 1 to 2 months to be able to get those permits back to you. And then you have the not so simple permits. These are just long, drawn out applications, basically writing the same thing over and over and over again to multiple different agencies. You need photos, plans, cover letters, and these just take time to get. These are not quick and easy to obtain. Sometimes it can take up to 9 months to obtain them, just depending on who you're getting them from. And it just all depends on the type of permit. This picture here, actually, we did not need permits for it. The contractors and designers decided we weren't going to impact any wetlands or waters. So it just shows you everything depends on if there's going to be permits or not. Permit process general overview. Very basic and simple here. Someone comes up with a project. Environmental is going to look at it. You don't touch wetlands or waters. Go ahead, do your project. If it does, hold up. Let's take a look at these things. We're going to impact some jurisdictional lands. We're going to have to create a permit for that. We need permits. It's just honestly a bunch of emails, paperwork, stuff like that, back and forth, and then you'll get your permits. All right. Where is the environmental process headed? So currently, maintenance and operation uses Maximo. It is an application used for attracting maintenance permits. Basically, every pipe that maintenance wants to replace goes through this process. I decide if it needs a permit or not. And if it does, I do the permit process. If it doesn't, I send it back to them. But we're working on a new application, Unifier. Good thing Billy Sweeney won 2 before me, so you guys learned all about Unifier. I think John set that up nicely, so I don't have to speak about it too much. Thank you, John, on that one. So currently in Unifiers, we're in a testing phase. Shout out Nelson Kesslerine and Aslan Jubb for testing it. They were able to put a few permits in. We were able to work all the kinks out, or mostly work all the kinks out and everything. It's currently used on the construction side of things and looks like it's going to be used for tickets and other good stuff Billy Sweeney talked about. And next, we're going to get into the permit side of things. So as I said earlier, Maximo is currently used to submit M&O permits. Currently, Maximo sees about 50 to 60 environmental permits a year. We're working on switching it over to Unifier. Once we have everything working smoothly with maintenance and operations, we plan to move into the capital sides of things with Unifier. So that means all your capital projects, all your permits are going to be right here, nice and easy, one-click application. I'm not sure if these transitions are showing up for everybody, but it's the first PowerPoint I've done since 2016. They kind of upgraded it a little bit, so it's pretty cool. You're probably wondering, but why Unifier if you have Maximo working all smoothly? Well, it's just going to create one application for everything. Like I said, capital projects are going to be here, maintenance projects are going to be here. Instead of bouncing back and forth, me having to run two applications, it's one application. I believe all your divisions are going to be able to look at it. And it's going to take out, if you have a question about if a project has a permit, then you'll be able to just go onto Unifier, log on to Unifier, check out these permits, see if they're there instead of flooding my inbox. It's more streamlined, quick and easy, less back and forth, workflows. That's a buzzword I learned from Billy Sweeney, so I'm going to talk to him about Unifier and use the word workflows. All right, and conclusion, environmental permits are important. Jail. What's next? Unifier and questions. I've decided I'm going to opt out of questions, just like many athletes have opted out of the NFL season and NBA season. So that's that. I'm just kidding. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I think there was one question. Never mind. It went away.
Look at that. Good to go. That's my contact information. You guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, or want to talk or anything like that, we'll be good to go. Thank you for your time.
All right, we are running a little ahead of schedule. That being said, we're gonna switch a presenter around, and I'm gonna be presenting next on the construction inspection framework. Now everybody wants to be done sooner, right? Here's hoping for better luck than yesterday. So I want to take this opportunity to talk about our inspection framework that was implemented over the last year. This replaced the process where we had a semi-final and final inspection. It was replaced with an initial and a primary inspection. So the framework was issued in a memo back in February of 2020 with an effective date of March 1st, 2020. The big goal here was to get the appropriate staff attending these inspections as needed to spur discussion, to get questions answered and learn some things, and get to the solution as quick as possible. So another goal was to alleviate the multiple punch lists that were out there, and also result in a timelier acceptance of our projects. So the initial inspection is to be performed by the administering section prior to the contractor demobilizing on a project. The maintenance district representative should be invited to this. If they can't attend, they're requested to submit a list of items ahead of time. At the same time, or parallel to this, it's typically the time that you'll have an ADA inspection if there's a pedestrian improvement or pedestrian facility on the project. So the administering section compiles a list of these deficiencies, including input from E&S, the ADA report, safety, bridge management if there's a structure, and compiles this list before the primary. So at the bottom, right of that slide there's a sample of the deficiency and the financial responsibility called out there. If it was a contractor item, that they'll be paid for, if it's their responsibility, if it was incidental to something else. This doesn't include locations. I think it was kind of a general list. But I have another example here. A little bit more detail on the initial inspection punch list. There's photos for this one. It also has stations and offsets, as well as even a plan sheet reference. And then again, it calls out the financial responsibility, either incidental or it's already been paid. So there's some framework that was established regarding timelines. So the initial inspection punch list is to be submitted to the contractor within 7 days of that inspection. And a completion date should be provided as to when you want those items addressed. The administering sections to maintain the list of items and when they are addressed. You know, when does the contractor fix those things? So down at the bottom there, there's an example. It's annotated in red that the contractor completed this item on August 31st, 2020. And after all those initial items are addressed, the primary inspection can be scheduled. So the administering section will reach out to engineering support to schedule a time and date. Then others will be invited. So your consultant, designer, your DelDOT project manager, or your DelDOT staff, your MPDS, maintenance, traffic. It all depends, you know, who has some game in this project. So then the administering section will have these discussions with everyone that's present and generate a primary inspection punch list. And engineering support generates their own report regarding these inspections. And we use these reports mainly for departmental documentation, education, and, you know, changing our best practices. And we usually have a meeting. We do have a meeting every month to discuss what we see on inspection reports and, you know, try to learn things going forward. So this also has a timeline for developing the list and getting it to the contractor. The administering sections to draft this list ahead of time and send it to the inspection team within 7 calendar days for their concurrence. The final inspection punch list is then sent to the contractor within 14 calendar days. And then the contractor has 30 calendar days to complete the primary inspection punch list. Again, it includes, you know, location, the item, and who's responsible for it. So final acceptance, the administering section will then notify the district engineer, maintenance engineer that all of the primary punch list items were addressed. We'll usually send a letter along with that that says it's ready for acceptance. Includes the date that these items have been taken care of. And maintenance should verify all these items within 30 calendar days, and then they'll accept the contract. So how have we been doing since March 1st, 2020? You know, construction really didn't slow down with the pandemic and everything. So I think we put a lot of projects out over that time, going through a new process. You know, I think a lot can be said that everybody's willing to work together and try to do this. You know, obviously practicing all the proper protocols. But we got out, got 97 projects through this process. 49 were in construction, 32 in public works, and 16 in maintenance. Just looking back on things, want to highlight some positives that we saw. So generally, we saw improved communication between all sections and engineering support. 85% of the administering sections are doing a really good job with the framework. They understand it. And I mean, there's occasional questions that arise, and we work through those. But most people are, you know, have gotten away from the semifinal and final and have adopted the initial and primary. Our average time from request of primary inspection to the actual inspection is 35 days. We had a goal. It started at 45 in the framework, and then after 6 months, it worked its way down to 30. We're slightly over that target, but there's, you know, some outliers out there. Some things come up. We provided an inspection date or opportunity for inspection, but due to circumstances, the date that was selected was pushed outside that window. So there's things like that have occurred. For instance, at the beach, you know, you get a project within a resort area. It's ready to be inspected in July. I don't think we really want to do that. So we push it off to the fall to complete that inspection. And then all sections have, you know, strive to get this punch list out within a timely manner. So there's always an opportunity to improve. We're all learning. This is a new process, new framework. So we're going to evaluate things, obviously. But on the CTF projects, we've noticed that there's some locations that are constructed over multiple years. They're task-based or work order type locations, and they're spread out over time and space. It makes sense to inspect those, as they're completed, so we don't have to inspect a whole bunch at the end. That'll help, move the acceptance process along. Same thing for ADA inspections. When we have these larger ADA projects, if we can break up those inspections into phases, schedule them earlier, work around the MOT that's out there, that could help, expedite that process as well as resolving some of the issues that might be there. The administering section generating the list within the timeline. Just, we got to try to meet that timeline of getting it out to the parties and getting it out to the contractor according to that. We're doing a good job with it, but there's always, a couple that don't fall in that range. It's also helpful if engineering support can receive that initial inspection punch list when the primary inspection is requested. We're not always receiving that. Acceptance. There's been a couple hiccups here. Maintenance has been questioning a few of the designs. The contractor built the project per plans. Unfortunately, it wasn't, perceived as the best solution to the problem. And, that may have resulted in some resistance from maintenance of accepting it. And we really can't do that because they're building it as per plan. We should have been involved ahead of time during the design review or even during construction. If there was something you saw, you could try to bring it up to your construction counterparts and say, is there a revision we can make here to try to fix this problem? Also, construction has waited on lists from maintenance ahead of inspections, not just maintenance, but other groups, that can't attend in person. Would require them to submit a list so they could have their items discussed at that meeting. So sometimes there's a wait on those items. And then the initial inspection punch list items are sometimes missing. We're not catching a lot of the stuff on initial inspections. And I'm talking about those repeat offender items that we continually see and, probably shouldn't be over time here. If we pay more attention to some of these items, I think it'll help speed things up on the back end for acceptance. So some of the things I'm talking about are like your signs, the sign sleeve that sticks up a little too high. It's missing bolts. Sometimes we have the wrong signs even installed. Concrete joints aren't present in both your curbing and your sidewalk. Inlets, sometimes they're missing a flow channel or they don't have steps as needed. The grade orientation might be off. Refer back to the details to figure out how that should be installed. A lot of times you have vegetative stabilization issues. Guardrail, missing hardware. Sometimes it's loose. Sometimes the bearing plate orientation might be off. A lot of times we run into some grading issues that it's not per details. Also bituminous joint sealing. So when you have the pavement abutting up against another section, we need to have that sealing or around like a manhole that's installed. Also, there's grading that isn't being installed on occasion around the shared use path and sidewalks. There's supposed to be a 6-to-1 grading for 2 feet per the details. And utility cover access. A lot of times our materials harden on top of those utility covers and it makes it difficult to access. So we just got to make sure we clean up those things. Detectable warning surface placement, vertical differences. Sometimes we have expansion material that's sticking up and it provides a little tripping hazard. It's hard to maneuver over. Again, if you're tying into pavement, sometimes you have to consider milling it down so we can get that vertical difference taken care of. Also turning in clear space. This isn't just a construction issue, but we need to be cognizant of it in design. So if there's a question about the turning or clear space, I would advise you to reach out to the designer and see, what we have to do to meet those requirements. Also, we have vertical clearance issues and other protrusions, vegetation hanging over a sidewalk. There's a certain height that's required for that, guy wires and signs. Horizontal openings or gaps, you can get stuck in those. Counter slope issues where you're coming out of a curb ramp. And then debris in general just hinders our inspection ability. So if there's a facility covered in debris, it makes it more difficult, which, ends up slowing down the process. So with that, I think ultimately we can pay a little bit more attention to some of those items that I identified as repeat offenders. I know you're all busy, but if we can just work on, trying to head off some of those minor ones that we all know about, I think it will reduce the list in the end. I'd like to promote more communication too between the administering sections, design, project development, and support groups. So if there's a question before it's installed, maybe we reach out to those groups and say, hey, is this really, how it's supposed to be? Or can you explain the detail a little bit to me? And hopefully we can head off some of these issues. But yeah, like I said, since it's been a year now, we're going to look at the process, look into some of the data on the timelines, and see if there's anything else we need to tweak with the framework. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, we have one question. Is the inspection process spelled out in the contract documents so that the contractor knows what is expected?
I don't believe it's in there yet. It was in that memo initially. So that's what we're talking about, tweaking the process. We haven't included it in the specification.
That's all the questions.
All right, so just want to make sure I have the right notes here. So next, we're going to have Tim Stenchula and Aaron Gerber to discuss the importance of pavement preservation and data collection for decision making. Thank you, guys.
Good afternoon. Chief Stenchula, the Assistant Maintenance Engineer in Central District. I was asked to put together a presentation on pavement preservation, and I could stand here and bore you for about 15 minutes about different pavement preservation methods, but I thought it'd be more beneficial to bring an expert in to discuss the importance of a good pavement preservation program and why we should spend more money on pavement preservation. So I went and talked to Sarah in our pavement management group. I got permission to work with their consultant, Kircher Group, and ultimately I wanted to work with Aaron Gerber. I knew he had the expertise and the data to convey a message about pavement preservation better than I did. So here's an outline of our presentation. I'll be going over the first question and talking about the history of pavement preservation and the efforts to improve these over time. Aaron will be going over DelDOT's pavement management system, or PMS, if you were wondering what that stood for in the schedule. And also he'll be doing a case study on the overall pavement condition trends and the network backlog. Why is this important to DelDOT? This is an important question. It's why I wanted to talk about this topic opposed to boring you with different pavement preservation techniques. Is there a way to go back? No, thank you. Sorry about that. So DelDOT's expected to do more with less. The point here is it's not only funding this problem, but with these different pavement preservation techniques, it's having enough contractors or local contractors doing this type of work. So we need to kind of ramp up into a program instead of dumping, multi-million-dollar contracts out to do certain types of pavement preservation. The pavement network here is the largest investment state. Pavement preservation will extend the life of this investment, which ultimately should save us money. By making our pavement preservation, our pavements last longer, we'll be able to provide an overall better network for the traveling public. Now I'm going to go over the what pavement preservation is and what we has historically done here at DelDOT. All right, pavement preservation, they're typically light surface treatments used to prolong the life of the underlying pavement structure. They are life-extending treatments to protect the pavement from the pavement structure from age hardening, oxidizing, and water intrusion through cracks to the lower layers. Basically, ensuring you have a good roof on your house. If water gets in, you're going to destroy the underlying parts of your house. And these are typically not considered structural treatments. They're more to protect the surface, as I said. And the pavement preservation should really only be applied to roads in good condition, especially no roads that are structurally deficient. In the past, when we were doing pavement preservation, some microsurfacing in particular, we may have done roads that were too far gone, whether or not they were timing or whatever, but we kind of learned our lesson firsthand with this issue. Here are some examples. You got fog seal, chip seal, slurry seal, or microsurfacing. And not pictured is one that we do a lot of is crack sealing. Crack sealing and the chip sealing are two operations that we do with our in-house forces. The rest of these we would typically contract out. DelDOT pavement preservation history is we're traditionally a mill and overlay agency where, you know, we do our 2-inch mill and fills, 1.5-inch mill and fills. That is, you know, historically how we've been preserving our pavements. We've been doing, you know, other pavement preservation techniques in the maintenance section over the years with varying levels of success. As I mentioned, you know, possibly pushing the envelope with some treatments on roads that were too far gone. Currently, we perform a lot of our pavement preservation on lower volume roads, but we hope to expand this to higher volume roads, obviously to, you know, do what is intended to preserve our hot mix pavements. Some listed here, some common treatments that are we are credited with doing here: microsurfacing, fog seals, thin overlays, and chip seals. But the note here with chip seals, we really only do them on existing chip seal roads, so we can kind of make a pavement system of chip seal, whereas other states would use a chip seal on top of a hot mix road as a pavement preservation. Well, that's my part of the presentation. Here's Aaron Gerber.
All right, thanks, Tim. I'm gonna struggle with some technology here for a minute. Thanks everybody for having me here. Kind of following on what Tim was talking about. He's talking about more of the operational type use of preservation here at DelDOT. I was going to talk a little bit more about, you know, how would you get from determining what the conditions of the pavements are to determining whether or not it's a good application of that treatment. And to start, I just want to talk about this as kind of more of a data-driven process. You know, DelDOT has in their pavement management group the capability to analyze the whole network and determine from that network what treatment should be applied based on the conditions that are out there. And so kind of tying those things together just a bit here, I'll start with, it really comes down to starting with the data that you have. And so managing the whole inventory of the network in your payment management system, but then also collecting condition data on a continuous basis to make sure that you're always making the most up-to-date decisions. DelDOT does employ a number of automated condition processes, including crack detection information, roughness information, rutting, and so on, and uses that information to determine certain conditions that need to be repaired. You're all very commonly familiar with the OPC, the Overall Payment Condition Index, and that's likely how you're considering whether or not a treatment should or shouldn't be applied. But it can go a little deeper than that, and the idea that you're collecting an awful lot of data and spending quite a bit of money to do that, you should make the best of that. And that's really what we're trying to do in the payment management system. So if you do see a treatment get recommended from that onto a list somewhere at some point in what you're doing, it could come from not just the OPC, but it could come from things like which distresses specifically are you seeing? Are they structural in nature? Are they environmental or non-structural in nature? And in most cases in the payment management system, we're looking at just having the right types of cracking or other types of distresses to determine where preservation should be treated. And in doing so, we're trying to minimize the opportunity of inadvertently triggering, say, a preservation on a structurally deficient roadway. We do that through a number of settings in the payment management system, one of which being decision trees, which this is just an example of one, but there are actually quite a number of different decision trees that are in the system. And the idea is that we're really trying to target exactly where in that, let's see if that's a laser pointer, no it's not, in that system, where exactly preservation is the best fit. Now, it's generally pretty lightly defined in here. I mean, you see that preservation generally goes within certain ranges of non-structural index. Non-structural index being your transverse type cracks or block cracks, but not your fatigue or alligator cut cracking or potholing and those sorts of things. And if it's in a good enough condition, it'll recommend the treatment for that. There are certain places, though, I mean, this is kind of an older example, but there are certain places where we actually won't currently allow preservation to be triggered. And like, for instance, it's showing in the interstate freeways and principal arterials that there's a preservation ban there. It's actually been modified recently, really just try to align closer to your policies. And right now the policy is you're not actually triggering preservations in those cases. But as Tim had mentioned, the idea would be to try to expand that as far as you can to get reasonable projects, beyond just the low volume roads. And so the software can recommend those. It can be category based, just preservation in general, and then at the project level, DelDOT would define which treatment is the right approach, whether it be microsurfacing or crack sealing or whatever the case may be. But the idea is that you're given an opportunity to say, this is the right place to be doing that. In addition to just cracking type information in the non-structural index, we also look at age-based triggering of preservation. And so that upper branch of trees there shows that we're looking to define in the non-interstate conditions of functional class certain specific ranges of ages of the pavements where preservation may be likely to be used and be effective in its use. And the idea being that if the pavement's gotten to be too old, it's likely got other distresses that are in place, or it could be too far oxidized to make that a good treatment to use. We also want to try to time it so that we're not having the software recommend treatment too early in some cases as well. And we're trying to essentially maximize the right timing to minimize any costs that you not necessarily need to incur. In addition to just managing where the treatment should be selected, we also model how they perform. And you can see down here is just an example of the way we're modeling performance in the payment management system for preservation treatments. We don't modify the life of an existing pavement structure when we apply them. We don't modify, say, the structure of that pavement. We're modifying the extension of life of that pavement. And so in practice, you see it as that kind of green band there, where the heavy black band below it is the existing pavement in place and its rate of deterioration. We would expect that if a treatment is applied, we would get some bump and improvement of the condition scores going vertical, but then it would extend the life throughout for the green model. And down somewhere in that end of life threshold there's some life extension that occurs for each treatment. That extension can be different by treatment, depending on which one you apply. But generally, we can just define essentially a value that seems reasonable based on past experience. So since we have limited time to really dive into this, we could take this in, as Tim said, in a lot of different directions. This is a big topic. But I was going to just focus in on a very, very simple case study of an analysis that was run in the payment management system to show the condition and monetary impact of having a program where you're using preservation and having a program where you don't use preservation. And the idea being is I'm trying to show you an example of here's a way that DelDOT generally does its work today, which is not very preservation heavy, but if they were to start to prioritize preservation in the program, could see what those impacts could be. So the scenario I run is an analysis budget of $80 million per year for a 10-year period. And that's kind of generally in the range of the total pavement networks budget that typically you would see. And I'm just reporting out very simple metrics. OPC, things you're all somewhat familiar with. And another metric that you may not be familiar with, but I wanted to introduce to you is backlog. The idea that there's always going to be some amount of pavements out there that have needs that you're not able to get to. And every year that you're doing work, there's roads out there that are continually deteriorating and there's costs associated with that. And so we can monetize that. We can show that actually the quantification of that value. So if I go into some quick examples here, click the button, but nothing happened. Let's see, do it again. See if we get 3 clicks. There we go. Here is a trend of OPC using those two different scenarios. One where preservation is applied, and when preservation is applied in an analysis, if you let the software free spend your money, it will take a lot more preservation as candidates because it is highly beneficial and very low cost for the quote you get. And then another scenario where you don't apply preservation and what happens to the OPC with those funds. Now, I will caveat this in that this is a scenario in the payment management system that is not typical in that you actually have a lot more rules on your money and we analyze on those rules. So for instance, federal aid projects would have some federal funding associated with them. They may only be applied to potentially the NHS. And so we'd have a separate bucket of money just for that. Each county or district actually gets its own subset of funds in this scenario as well. And that's usually based on the lane miles that you're actually managing. So here is a kind of a hypothetical, but just to give you a sense of what we can and can't do. And so this may doesn't look all that interesting, but let me just kind of point out that what we're really seeing by just by allowing the software to choose preservation, we can get an 8-point increase over a 10-year period in the OPC of the network. That may not sound all that impressive until you see it in the next slide, which is the backlog. What is the monetary cost of 8 points? Here is a trend, red being the overall network of unmet needs, unmet projects. The red is with preservation, the blue is without. And what we find is by year 10, there's a $300 million difference in backlog of needed projects because you're not doing preservation. And so just by applying preservation and timing it properly, you can save significant amounts of money here. And that's something we can prove through the optimization, through the analysis of that data. And again, as I say, this is a kind of a very hypothetical scenario, but all the same rules apply. You can see what those monetary impacts are. This sometimes can be a lot easier to describe to folks when they're trying to explain why you should be doing preservation. Is when you monetize it, it becomes real. So just some final thoughts as we wrap up here. As you can see, I mean, preservation is incredibly beneficial to the network health. Remember, if we can keep the good roads good, we don't have to fix them into the future. Any roads we can keep from having to fix down the road can save us significant amounts of backlog in our costs and our needs into the future. I'll say that it tends to be significantly cheaper per unit area compared to traditional mill and overlay. So if you can do the treatments early in the life of the pavement and spend less money, maybe you have to apply it more often, but the overall cost is actually much less than waiting for a roadway to deteriorate to the point where you need your traditional mill and overlay, or in some cases, even more than that, reconstruction. This will require commitment to this program, and you know, the things that you really need to do to get that commitment are, and we are all faced with this same issue, is you do need to gain public buy-in. The public needs to be on board, because quite often the reason you're not doing preservation is because you have backlash from the public when they see the results of what you're doing. I've seen this quite a bit in chip seal roads. That's why in a lot of cases you're converting them to hot mix. But at the end of the day, it's a lot cheaper to manage a chip seal road than it is a hot mix. You need to gain agency buy-in. Not everyone in the agency is going to agree with this process. And they might not be comfortable with these types of treatments. And so when you think about contracting this work and defining the specifications and putting out the bid documents and then inspecting it, everyone has to be knowledgeable of what these treatments, how these treatments should look when they're placed, what acceptance looks like, and understand the whole process behind it. Another major challenge that I know a lot of agencies are facing is attracting contractor competition. A number of states actually in the region actually are frustrated with the inability to contract for certain types of treatments because they don't have the contractors available. And so when you only have one contractor bidding on it, it can make this a difficult process. Makes it easier to fall back into the old, just do the typical mill and fill process, because you just got a lot of competition for that. And then I'll make a final plug for the work that I do, which is assisting DelDOT with programming and using your software tools and gathering your data. You know, do your best to use those tools when you're trying to determine where your preservation candidates reside. You know, it's not easy necessarily to define those things, but if you sit down and kind of, you know, sketch out exactly where and when you would apply these treatments, you can actually put all of that information right into the software to try to, you know, capture those business rules that you ultimately follow. And so, as I say, thanks for the time. As I say, it's a broad topic, and we just covered a whole lot of ground in a very short period of time. Are there any questions?
There's a couple that came in, but Tim's answering them in the chat.
Great. Okay.
So you're good. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tim and Aaron.
Yeah, I want to thank Tim too for calling us into this. Is good topic.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to Alex Tarantino, architectural historian from Environmental, who will be discussing the public outreach process and mitigation for a few of our projects.
Yeah, I can get this button to work. Good afternoon, everyone. As John said, my name is Alex Tarantino. I'm an architectural historian with DelDOT's Environmental Stewardship section. So I'm here today to talk about a few of our current public outreach and mitigation efforts related to DelDOT bridge projects. But before I got started and get into the good stuff, I wanted to address the elephant in the room, which is, what is a historian doing working for DelDOT, and why should DelDOT care about old stuff? So I know this is old news for all of our designers. I like to think we train them all well, but this is the main question that I get from folks once they find out where I work. So I won't bore you with my history is important speech this time, but the short answer is because it's the law. So one of the main responsibilities of our section is to ensure compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA as we call it. So NEPA requires that federal agencies consider the effects of their actions or projects on the environment. And we commonly refer to NEPA as an umbrella law because it provides a framework for federal agencies to comply with a whole list of other related environmental policies and regulations. So one of the main regulation that I deal with is Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. So this act was significant because it formally recognized the importance of identifying and preserving historic resources at a time when growth and development was really dependent on tearing old things down. So a couple of other sort of important things about this act. it affirmed that the preservation of historic properties is in the public interest. So, time and time again, studies have shown that preservation has cultural, educational, and economic benefits, just to name a few. And this idea of the public benefit is key, especially for those of us working in the public sector. So kind of keep that in mind. And lastly, this act recognized the federal government's responsibility to lead and encourage preservation efforts and established a framework for the government to do so. So part of that framework is Section 106, which refers to the part of the National Historic Preservation Act that requires federal agencies to account for their project impacts on historic resources. So if DelDOT has a project that requires federal involvement, the project team must coordinate with our section to complete the 106 process prior to the expenditure of any federal funds or the issuance of any federal approval. So if you look at this flow chart I have up on the screen, you'll notice that it refers to Section 106 as a review process. So this is important to note. So Section 106 is a procedural law, which means it doesn't require a specific outcome like preservation. So if we determine that there are significant historic resources that may be impacted by a project, 106 says it's our responsibility then to seek ways to avoid, minimize, or mitigate any adverse or negative effects. And if that's not possible, then we mitigate for that. So the other thing I wanted to point out about 106 is that the review process doesn't happen within a vacuum. So you'll notice on the right side of the screen that consultation takes place throughout this process. So we consult with federal and state agencies, as well as city and county representatives, Native American tribes, other interested stakeholders, and the public to seek their input. So a critical part of this consultation effort is the coordination that occurs internally with our project managers and designers during the project development and design phases. So the goal of the 106 process, again, we're all experts on this now, right? The goal really is to seek compromise. So on the one hand, as DelDOT employees, our job is project delivery, right? DelDOT is responsible for the safety of the traveling public, and this means improving the existing infrastructure to ensure that. But we also have a responsibility to undertake these projects in a way that's least impactful to the environment, which includes historic properties. So my experience has been that good communication between our groups is the key to an effective and efficient Section 106 review process. A lot of times I find that historians and engineers, we don't always speak the same language. I know probably nobody here would agree to drive over a bridge that I designed. But the point is, by working together, we have all the tools we need to sort of get there. So it's my job to tell the designers and the design team about the cultural resources that are near their project and why they're important. And we need the design team's help in understanding the scope of work, the need for the project, and any design constraints that we might need to know about. And from there, we can explore options to avoid or minimize those adverse effects. So the bridges. Delaware has historic bridges? What? That's crazy. So there are no Golden Gate or Brooklyn Bridge, but yes, we do. So we've got bridges that are historically significant for their role in the development of transportation across the state. Many of these bridges are examples of advancements in the field of engineering and bridge design, or represent common types of bridges that were constructed during a certain period. So the tricky part is that these historic bridges are part of our aging transportation infrastructure, and often, or at least at some point, will need repair or replacement. So the work has the potential to adversely affect these historic structures. So today, I just wanted to highlight 3 of our current projects that involve historic bridges and Section 106 coordination. So all 3 of these projects required permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So that is what triggered our 106 review. These are all examples of projects where it wasn't possible to avoid or minimize any adverse effects. So DelDOT is now responsible for mitigation. So our mitigation typically varies depending on the project and the resource, but it usually involves some sort of public outreach component and the production of educational materials that we can distribute. Again, we're doing this for the public benefit, so we want the outcome to be something that's useful for the public. So our group has been putting in a lot of effort recently to come up with creative mitigation strategies that the public will enjoy and find useful. But on these three projects, because of the historic nature of the bridges, the projects required extensive coordination with the project team. And I think the team and bridge design and sort of our project development sections will agree that this is something to be proud of. We've worked really hard to build good working relationships with our design teams to better facilitate this process. So I think these hopefully will be examples that kind of show that. So the first project I wanted to talk about is the Silver Lake Dam Repairs Project, which involves replacement of sluice gates on these two bridges, and as well as some other repairs. So these bridges are located near Middletown. Over the past couple of years, severe flooding and rain events basically destroyed the old wooden gates. And it just so happens that these bridges are historic themselves, and they're located in what we would call a historically sensitive area. So the adjacent parcel, one of the adjacent parcels, is actually the site of one of the oldest mill seats in central Delaware, probably dating to the 1720s. So it operated as a mill for hundreds of years, basically. So these bridges are significant for their unique design, which incorporates sluice gates that were used to control the flow of water from Silver Lake, which was the former mill pond. So historically, flooding has been an issue here. And starting in the 1930s, the State Highway Department began to make improvements to the dam and Silver Lake Road to protect the road and downstream properties from flooding. So keeping in mind that one of the important features of these bridges is the gates, we worked together with the project team to determine if there was a way to replace the gates in kind. That's something we usually recommend to minimize impacts. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible here. The older type gates were inadequate to control the flow, and they were also dangerous for maintenance forces to operate. So another unique design feature that we had to consider are these concrete flower planters. And you can see photos of them there. They're located on the upstream side of Bridge 1407. So the issue here is that the position of the new gates were in conflict with these concrete flower planters. So again, we worked with the design team. They attempted to come up with a workaround so that the planters could remain in place. But unfortunately, this was not feasible due to some design and operational constraints. And so you can see the rendering there that they kind of put together, showing that if we were to avoid the flower planters, the operating mechanism would basically be at shoulder height for somebody operating them, and that obviously is not going to work, especially in a flood emergency situation. But I think this back and forth collaboration is a good example of the 106 process in action, and shows that we made that good faith effort to minimize adverse effects. So currently we are working on the mitigation for this. We've got a consultant finalizing the design of an educational booklet on the history of the bridges and the nearby mill, and that'll be distributed to local institutions and posted on our website so it's widely available. And we're also exploring other public outreach opportunities with the bridge design section to sort of piggyback on their ongoing STEM education efforts. So the next project will be familiar for those of you who've been working at DelDOT or with DelDOT for a while, because it feels like it's been in the works for like 1,000 years. This is the Piles Ford Culvert Replacements Project. So there are two culverts on Piles Ford Road in northern Newcastle County that were failing. So one of the culverts, which is the one you see pictured here, had partially collapsed. And this one actually is historic. Because of its condition, replacement was really the only realistic option. So this culvert is made entirely of stone and is unique in that it has that triangular shaped opening. This form is rare in Delaware. I have not seen another one like it. And our research suggests that it's rare nationwide as well. So trying to learn more about this culvert was like trying to put together a puzzle where half of the pieces were missing. We have very little documentation about its construction, no plans, very little references in historical documents. And so we just have an estimated construction date of 1816 based on its style. So our goal with mitigation on this one is to learn as much as possible as we can about its construction and to gather this data to make it more accessible. So what we're doing is creating a record of this culvert. So after it's removed, it's not totally lost. So the record is going to include a historical narrative, photos, and measured drawings, and you can kind of see a draft of those drawings here on the screen. And so all of this together will be submitted to the Library of Congress, where it'll be housed. And I think this is sort of significant, right? Because we're able to make this data about this tiny culvert in Delaware available to researchers and people worldwide, really. One of the other sort of interesting things about this is that we committed to do monitoring during demolition of the culvert to see if there was anything else that we could learn. And so this culvert was actually removed last week. We were out on site. I don't have any photos because I had to turn in the presentation before that, unfortunately, but kudos to everyone involved. This is another one where there was extensive coordination between design, construction, and the contractor to get this done, and it was only successful because of everybody's cooperation. So, all right, the last one. Hopefully I haven't lost anybody yet. So this is another project that's gotten a lot of media attention recently. This is a railroad bridge down in Lewis that spans the Lewis-Rehoboth Canal. It was actually closed to rail traffic in 2016 after an inspection revealed some pretty significant scour and settling issues from one of the piers. So this bridge is actually significant, again, because it's a unique type. So this is a swing bridge. It's movable, so it opens and closes to allow the passage of boat traffic. And so our research suggests that this is one of the remaining examples of its type of railroad bridge in the country. So as part of our 106 review, we did explore options to rehabilitate or repair the bridge, but removal was found to be the preferred option based on cost and the lack of rail traffic on this part of the rail. So going into this, we knew that we were going to need a pretty robust public outreach and stakeholder kind of involvement effort. The community in this area is very engaged and vocal and concerned about the loss of this resource. There's actually a nonprofit group that has formed with the intent to preserve the bridge. So throughout all of this, DelDOT has been working with that group and others to gather input and formulate a mitigation plan. So what we're doing on this one currently, we have a consultant who's completing a laser scan and photography of the bridge. And this data will be used to create a sort of other digital media that'll be incorporated into a touchscreen kind of educational exhibit that'll be housed locally for visitors to come and learn about the history of the bridge and how it functioned. We're also going to be installing some interpretive panels like you see in the photo there, again, to sort of help visitors learn more about this bridge. And the last kind of crazy thing, I think I'm running out of time, that I wanted to mention is that this bridge is actually going to be relocated just east of where it is now to rest beside a portion of the trail. So this is not part of our 106 mitigation, but sort of based on that extensive coordination that we've done with this interested group, DelDOT has agreed sort of, based on community interest to preserve this bridge in some way. So I think, again, that's pretty significant. I think it's great for DelDOT. This is an example when we kind of show that we are actively trying to be good stewards of our historic resources and working with the public to make that happen. So thanks everybody for your time today. Again, big kudos to everybody involved on these projects. It's a lot of work and effort, but I think it's worthwhile. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Alex. You don't have any questions at this time?
All right, thank you.
So we're going to do something here. We're going to move some things on the agenda a little bit. We're going to advance to the SR1 minus Conway GSI project. These are pre-recorded messages, the next two. Ed Robles will be discussing this project. This is an in-house project down near the beach. So with that, we can start the video.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Robles, and I am a project manager in DOT's Project Development South. Today, I will be presenting an overview of the SR1 and minus Conway grade separated intersection capital project. This project was last presented a few years ago in the same venue, and today I will be going over the progress we've made so far and what lies ahead. So for the agenda, I will be starting with a project background overview. Then I will hit some key aspects of the project, which include going over the preferred alternative, highway design, structures, stormwater drainage, bike ped connectivity, noise analysis and impacts, as well as project costs and schedule. The project is located in Sussex County, west of Lewis. The project extends approximately 1.75 miles along SR1 and begins under northern limits near the Red Mill Pond culvert and extends down to almost, but not quite, down to 5 points. The purpose of the project is to maintain capacity of the SR1 corridor, improve safety, mobility, and access for local traffic, and also to enhance multimodal transportation in the project area. Some project background. In 1999, the Corridor Capacity Preservation Program was created, and the intersection of minus Conway and SR1 was identified as a location where a grade-separated intersection would ultimately be developed. In 2016, the minus Conway GSI project was initiated. Traditional grade-separated concept design at this intersection resulted in significant property impacts and difficulty accommodating all traffic movements. As a result, the department stopped pursuing this design. In 2017, the department also completed a traffic study at the intersection of Tulip Drive in SR1 and Nassau Road in SR1. The study was completed due to the high number of crashes at these locations. Short time after the study, a section of the Delaware Coastline Railroad was decommissioned. This allowed the department to use the railroad right-of-way under the Nassau bridges for the proposed grade separated intersection. In 2018, the project team created concepts to utilize the railroad corridor and took these concepts to the public via a public workshop. This slide shows one of the renderings that were presented at the workshop. The display on the top of the slide is a photo of the railroad corridor. The display below is a rendering of the same photo showing the future connector road and shared use path under the Nassau bridges. This led to the preferred alternative shown here. This alternative was taken to the public in the fall of 2019 via a public workshop. The workshop was well attended, and overall the feedback received was positive. The main aspects of the project include the construction of service roads to provide local residents an east to west connection that does not require access to SR1. This is achieved through the construction of a connector road under the Nassau bridges, as well as a service road, as well as service roads on the east and west sides of SR1. The project will include 3 roundabouts, one at minus Conway, one at the Nassau and New Road intersection, and one on the west side of SR1 near the Lewis Senior Center. Next, I will provide a brief walk through the project. Going from north to south, north being on the right side of the page, our project begins just north of the existing culvert crossing SR1, which is located in this area. As we move south, the northbound and southbound lanes of SR1 begin to shift west and begin to come closer together. Shown in gray here is the concrete median barrier proposed to separate those two directions of SR1. There's also a gray, shown in gray is a median barrier separating Nassau Road and SR1. Also shown here is Nassau Road. Nassau Road currently ends in about this area. Nassau Road will be extended all the way up to Greystone Manor, or Greystone Drive, to provide a two-way access road for residents and businesses on the east side of Route 1. As we continue south, we're installing a new southbound exit ramp from SR1, which will provide a connection to Minus Conway, and the connector road headed south through this roundabout. This roundabout also facilitates access for Minus Conway and points south to access southbound SR1 through this exit ramp. As we continue south on the connector road on the west side of SR1, the connector road reaches another roundabout located on the west side of SR1 near the Lewis Senior Center. This roundabout also provides a connection to the east and west connector road, connects Nassau Road and New Road to the west side of SR1. As we continue south along this connector road, which eventually turns into Janus Road, on the east to west connector road, we'll note that the Georgetown to Lewis Trail will be relocated in this area in order to make room for that connector road. And the Georgetown to Lewis Trail will be located on the south side of the connector road as shown here in the lime green color. Nassau Road will continue south, continue being a two-way service road, and it will be extended. Nassau Road currently ends in this vicinity. Nassau Road will be extended down to Tulip Drive. Janus Road continues south. It currently, Janus Road's end in this vicinity. It will continue south and merge onto SR1. The merge lane for Janus Road will actually become the third lane for southbound SR1 down to 5 points. Along SR1, south of the Nassau bridges, SR1 will begin once again to pinch the median and come closer together, as depicted by this concrete barrier separating the two north and southbound lanes, in order to accommodate that third lane or that merge lane from Janus, as well as the extension of Nassau Road down to Tulip Drive. As we continue to go south, the GSI project ends around here in this vicinity. However, there's a part of the project that will be actually done ahead of the GSI project. This section of the KMC shows improvements that will be made ahead of the Minus Conway project. This improvement consists of facilitating a U-turn movement at the 5-point signal for vehicles on southbound 1 headed back up north. The existing conditions does not allow for a U-turn at this location. Currently, to make this movement, vehicles have to go through 5 points, the 5-point signal, down around this jug handle back to the 5-point signal, essentially having to go through that traffic light twice. In order to accommodate this vehicle-only U-turn, the existing median concrete island will have to be extended north to avoid any conflict points between the U-turns and the right turns from westbound US 9. Something else that we're doing as part of this project that will be done ahead of the Minus Conway GSI is extending that right turn from US 9 north. From US 9, north. We're extending that merge lane, essentially adding a third lane to northbound SR1 all the way up to Tulip Drive. This slide shows a typical section of SR1 consisting of 12-foot travel lanes and 8-foot outside shoulders and 4-foot inside shoulders. This typical section, you can also see a proposed 42-inch concrete barrier separating both directions of SR1. as well as a concrete barrier, 42-inch as well, separating Nassau Road from northbound SR1. The Nassau Road section is consistent with other service roads that are part of the project, consisting of 11-foot travel lanes and 5-foot shoulders. This typical section shows curbing and a shared use path with a 5-foot buffer in between. However, the drainage design for the project is a mix of open and closed drainage. So there are areas where ditches are used for stormwater conveyance, and shared use path and the road will be shown farther apart. So structures, due to the various road improvements being made by this project, we have identified 3 main areas where structural improvements are needed. This aerial shows Nassau Road here and Janus Road here. This is south of the Nassau bridges. There's an existing 36-inch RCP that will need to be replaced with a 66 and 60-inch RCPs, as well as head walls being constructed on both sides of the Nassau Road. The line shown in yellow is an existing 48-inch RCP. We see the need to extend the head wall and the outlet of that RCP pipe in order to make room for that shared use path to be constructed on the west side of Janus Road. The third area where structural improvements are needed is near the Nassau bridges. This slide shows photos of the decommissioned railroad beneath the Nassau bridges. This photo is outdated as the railroad has been replaced with the Georgetown to Lewis Trail. However, our project includes the construction of a connector road where the existing Georgetown to Lewis Trail is, shown as railroad tracks on this photo, and a shared use path to be relocated between the Nassau Bridge columns and the bridge embankment. So in this general area, in order to fit a 10-foot wide trail, we will need to cut into the bridge embankment and install a retaining wall. This slide shows the approximate location of a retaining wall, shown in the red line here. The wall is approximately 8 foot high and 266 feet long. The wall will include some sort of form liner to improve the aesthetics and visual appeal of the retaining wall, particularly in this area of the state. We have received comments from the public and other organizations to construct something that will match the atmosphere of the area. So the actual finished look is still to be determined. The stormwater and drainage design for the project is a mix of open and closed drainage segments. The 2 natural outfalls for the project are Red Mill Pond to the north and Black Hole Gut to the south, which both eventually lead to the Brook Hill River. The stormwater approach on the project is to meet both the quality and quantity stormwater requirements through the construction of a wet extended detention basin. We're also proposing a dry pond to attenuate peak flows during large storm events. Those ponds are shown on this slide. The dry pond is located here, and it will outfall to Red Mill Pond. The wet detention basin is shown between northbound SR1 and Nassau Road, and will outfall to Black Hole Gut. Also shown here is the trailhead with a proposed infiltration basin. Something that we are currently working on is revising our plans to send more runoff towards this infiltration basin to create a stormwater management treatment credit for other projects that are on the horizon, especially since this site has very good infiltration rates and the space is already owned by the state. So enhancing multimodal transportation and connectivity, particularly when it comes to bicyclists and pedestrians, has been a key element of the project. We've received several comments from the local residents to make improvements in this regard. This slide shows the proposed shared use path and sidewalk to be included as part of the project. The shared use path is shown in lime green and the sidewalk in peach or orange color. Also, this display does not show it, but we'll be extending the shared use path along the southbound SR1 section to connect to the shared use path network for another capital project, the Plantation Road project. In 2019, DelDOT contracted Wallace Montgomery to complete noise analysis evaluations for the project. This analysis showed 3 areas along the project limits that would see an increase in noise levels greater than the allowed threshold. Those areas are shown in red on this image. And the area shown in yellow represents areas that will see an increase in noise levels that didn't meet the criteria for mitigation. However, we evaluated what it would take to mitigate the noise increase, regardless, due to the public demand, really. So when we evaluated these sections for mitigation, we found that these 2 on the southern side either didn't meet the feasibility or reasonableness criteria to warrant mitigation or a noise wall or berm. However, noise berm was feasible and reasonable in this area north of Minas Conway. And our evaluation of mitigation here, we found that just increasing there's an existing berm by a few feet would provide a good amount of noise mitigation for these residents. So this slide shows the proposed earth berm discussed earlier. Each berm is approximately 2,000 feet long and 8 foot high. Fortunately, the project will have an overall surplus of fill, so no additional fill wouldn't be needed. Will need to be purchased to construct these berms. This slide shows the cost of the project. Total construction costs amount to about $35 million. Right-of-way costs account for about 4.5. Total project cost of $39 million. And the schedule for the project, 2020 was a pretty busy year for us. We reached our semifinal milestone. We submitted plans in June 2020. And then we went right into the value engineering aspect of the project or process. We went through this process because after preliminary plans, before submitting semifinals, our estimates were showing that we were close to that $50 million threshold, and we decided to go through that process just in case. Luckily, as you could tell by the budget I provided earlier, we're below that $50 million threshold. But the value engineering process was, either way, it was very helpful. We also have final right-of-way plans that were completed in the fall of 2020. And are coming up will be final construction plans in June and PSNE in October. We hope to begin construction in the spring of 2023 and be done in the middle of 2025 or 2026, as the project is anticipated to take approximately 2.5 years. And that brings me to the end. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
All right, thank you, Ed. There was a couple questions that were answered. If there are any additional questions, you can email Ed Robles directly. With that, we're going to move on to another pre-recorded presentation by our CAD resource engineer, Dave Kleinot.
Oh, hi there, Winter Workshop neighbors. So glad you could join me on this beautiful new day. What's this I have here? I'm so glad you asked. Follow me. Were you able to guess what it was? It's a magical item that allows me to show whatever I want. Do you know what I want to show you? Why, the 2021 CAD update, of course. Now, by snapping my fingers, I can have anything I want show up on my magical board. Let's try it out. Pretty neat, huh? Okay, let's get started. That's not right. Ah, that's better. But it does look a little small. Let's see if we can do something about that. Okay, much better. Now we can get started. Oh look, it's the ProjectWise Wiki. The department has recently launched the ProjectWise Wiki to house all trainings, forms, and guidelines in a way that is continuously updated.
But how do we get to the ProjectWise Wiki?
Oh hey, Sasma Bagday, I didn't see you there. What an excellent question. To get to the ProjectWise Wiki, you can either enter the following URL or go to the DRC and find the new ProjectWise section on the left below Project Management. Also, we have added a link to the ProjectWise Wiki in the DelDOT comment menu. Okay, let's see what's up next. Ooh, the CAD Wiki. The CAD Wiki is similar to the ProjectWise Wiki in that it will house all trainings, forms, and guidelines that are continuously updated.
And how do we get to the CAD Wiki?
Another great question, Sasma Bagday. Similar to the ProjectWise Wiki, there are a few ways to get to the CAD Wiki. You could either enter the following URL, or on the Design Resource Center, the CAD section now links to the CAD Wiki. All the information has been migrated over to the DRC. Also, we have added a link to the CAD Wiki in the DelDOT comment menu.
What about the CAD manual? It's been so long since it's been updated.
Yes, it has been a long time. Well, you'll be happy to hear that we are working on an update now.
Yay!
The existing CAD manual has been uploaded to the CAD Wiki and is currently being updated. On the CAD Wiki, it is located under the Manual section entitled DelDOT CAD Standards Manual. To view changes and updates, go to the CAD manual and click View History in the top right corner.
This is so exciting. What's up next?
Let's see.
Oh, could I try this one?
Of course you could, Sasma Bagday.
Open Designer, MicroStation Ribbon Edition, and ProjectWise?
You okay, Sasma Bagday?
Yeah, just had a frog in my throat. So, I actually don't know what those are.
That's okay, Sasma Bagday. Let me explain. OpenRoads Designer is the replacement to Inroads.
Ooh, I know what Inroads is. And MicroStation Connect Edition?
That's the replacement to MicroStation V8i.
Ooh. And let me guess. ProjectWise is the replacement to Windows?
That is a good guess, Sasma Bagday. ProjectWise is similar to Windows File Explorer, but it is what we call a document management system. It will eventually replace a lot of what we would use the servers for, like the Y drive, G drive, V drive, and even the FTP.
Oh, that's so cool. So, how long until we can start using all this cool stuff?
All projects started after January 1st, 2021 are required to use MicroStation Connect Edition and ProjectWise. Any projects requiring the use of a civil design application are required to utilize OpenRoads Designer. One more important thing to note is that Bentley has scheduled support for Power Inroads SS10 to be deprecated at the end of 2021.
Oh no!
Because of this, the department has officially deprecated resource support for Inroads SS10 and older, as well as all V8i versions of MicroStation.
So what if I'm still designing a project in Inroads SS10?
To prepare for this internally, all current projects under design that have not passed the semifinal submission phase, forecasted to be under design beyond the end of 2021, should be brought to the attention of the CAD support section so that they can be evaluated for migration to the MicroStation Connect Edition, OpenRoads Designer, and ProjectWise workflows.
I didn't receive any notification of these changes.
Oh, Sasma Bagday, are you signed up for the DRC updates?
No, what's that?
Notifications for changes in the CAD resources, as well as monthly update reminders for the DRC, go out via the Design Resource Center updates. To sign up for this, go to the Design Resource Center homepage and look for the sign up link under Latest News. One more important note about OpenRoads Designer: Bentley is actively developing and improving the OpenRoads Designer application and typically releases quarterly updates to the application. Due to complexities that arise with the quarterly updates and our resources, the department will only be supporting the latest 2 releases. Okay, let's see what's up next. What you doing, Sasma Bagday?
I'm trying to snap my fingers, but I realized something.
That you don't have fingers?
Yeah.
Let me help you out with that, little buddy. An update to the electronic plan review and Bluebeam. Bridge and Project Development transitioned to the use of Bluebeam Studio for all internal plan reviews on January 1st, 2020. In that time, we have performed over 230 plan reviews. We have worked out many of the kinks in the process and are looking to bring other sections within the department on board. There are many trainings available on the DRC, including a best practices and a general training entitled Electronic Plan Review under Project Management. If you would like more information about how you and your section could use Bluebeam, please do not hesitate to contact me.
That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you, Sasma Bagday. And you've been an excellent neighbor.
The only thing I'm still not sure about is where to go if I still have questions.
If you ever have any questions, just send an email to dot.CADsupport@delaware.gov. Well, I hope you all have a snappy day and enjoy the rest of the winter workshop. See you next time, Winter Workshop neighbors.
All right, well, wasn't that very interesting? Yeah. Moving on, we're at our break now, so we're right on schedule. We're gonna come back at around 2:30 and pick up where we left off. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. If you enjoyed your break, just so everyone knows that we, on the previous presentation, the SR1 minus Conway grade separation project, before the break, being that we were running ahead of schedule. So now we're going to pick up with Brian Urbanek discussing the ways the M&O section has made some adaptations due to the pandemic. Brian?
Great, thank you. So I was asked to speak about how COVID impacted our business practices over this past year. Obviously, this time last year was not thinking this was going to be necessarily a topic for the winter workshop, or at least just starting to become aware of it at the time. So I'll run through a couple things that we went through. Right. So January 20th, 2020, first confirmed case in the United States, March 11th, 2020. Division of Public Health announces the first case in Delaware. And March 20th of 2020, a state of emergency declared that we're still operating under, with obviously, if you look at the website, many amendments and adaptations. There we go. Sorry, getting used to the lag here a little bit. So one of the first things we did was for employees who were able, we allowed them to telecommute. Kind of touched on this when Todd did his presentation yesterday, but obviously that involved then making sure people understood the policy, getting people access, laptops, VPN, and then tracking activity logs to make sure we're being productive. However, for many of our M&O employees, they are unable to telecommute and need to report to a maintenance facility. And this is just a point I wanted to make because I think many people in this audience have probably done a lot of telecommuting. For many of our folks, they've been there every day, trying to do the best they can to get their job done, keep our roads clear of snow, clean up storm damage. And so it's been a challenging year. And so I just want to talk about some of the things we did to try to manage this risk and keep our folks safe and stay open for business. So obviously some of the basics that at this point I think everyone's heard over and over again. If you're sick, stay home. Practice social distancing. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Hand sanitizer. All those things we've been implementing and using over and over again. We implemented split shifts. So by that, we had half the yard come in about a half hour to an hour early, and then rotated, alternated between shifts to try and minimize the interaction and minimize contact, possible contacts. We also limited access to the crew quarters. Obviously, restrooms were open, things like that, but no longer gathering inside to have morning meetings and discussions like that. Tried to again minimize contact. And then typically with the restrooms and facilities where we could, we tried to upgrade to hands-free devices such as soap dispensers, faucets, kicks for the doors, toe kicks so you can open up doors, things like that. In terms of our vehicles, we had an extended period of time where we had one person per vehicle. Up to this point where we had two people in a vehicle but wearing a mask. So there were definitely operations where we had a lot of equipment out on a job site, but at least it kept people safe. We also looked at disinfecting our vehicles and facilities. Any of our pool vehicles, when you get back here, you're going to notice they have another sticker, another label in them, just reminding you to please wipe down the vehicle before and after you use it. We developed one of the things when we're in storm season, whether it's snow or any of the other storms we deal with, we do have, if the operation goes on long enough, we do have to have rest breaks. So we developed, based on CDC guidelines, tried to minimize risk, developing some protocols for how to do our rest breaks when people need to basically get some sleep while the storms are going on. And again, that was something we had never dealt with before under the circumstances. That was a challenging situation. Wait a minute. How do I go back? There we go. Okay, well, I'm not sure if I'm out of order or not. I guess while we were talking about basics, I did want to just do a quick reminder about masks. In the Urbanic household, safety first. And so obviously under the chin, on top of the head, there's a no-no. The last image there is a little closer, a little bit of a gap there up above, but you try getting a mask on a rabbit. So anyways, just wanted to remind people about wearing masks. I think people have done a good job overall. As you can see, the rabbit loves wearing it just as much as we all do. So in addition to our day-to-day operations, we had a number of special events that came up due to the pandemic and or other circumstances. So we had anything from food drives to protests to tornadoes. There was presidential support for the motorcade, and then of late, vaccine drives. So it was a lot going on operationally, like I said, in addition to our normal day-to-day. And as someone aptly described, they said it's basically the snowstorm that never ends. This wasn't a week, 2 weeks, a month, a snow season. This has been going on for a year, and it looks like while we're optimistic and hoping for better days in 21, I think we still have a ways to go. So things we got to keep doing. Early on, it was a rapidly evolving situation. The guidance was literally changing day by day. I can tell you when we had the first positive case, we ended up at one of our area yards, and we're together with the crew. We're standing in the shop, and emotions were running high. We had people were legitimately scared. People were angry. People were confused, and we're trying to answer the questions. Sitting there looking at a frequently asked, an FAQ from DPH that was doing the best they could to share guidance. But at the end of the day, we didn't know at that point. It was so early on, you really didn't know, but we knew that we were going to try to manage and try to stay open for business, and we obviously did that. But again, it was an emotional time, and definitely something that I think I'll always remember. Supplies, I just had a picture that was one of the superintendents and myself ended up, we were getting low on supplies when we found something at Lowe's, and it only let us buy one jug at a time. So we ran through the line. We left a few jugs on the shelf, but we ran through the line 10 or 12 times. And at least we had some disinfectant so that we could try and keep the facility clean. The other point, and I'll talk about this as we go on a little bit, but early on, there was definitely a high level of vigilance. Obviously there was a lot of unknowns, and so people were, I think, really good about making sure they're washing their hands, wearing a mask, keeping safe, socially distancing. As time went on, it became obviously some fatigue set in, and it became challenging to stay on top of all these things. One of the things that kind of reflected as the numbers went up and then went back down is at one point we were having daily calls, then weekly calls. Then you got into a nice stretch there in the summer where we didn't have any calls, and we were back to weekly calls. And I think right now we're on a calls as needed type of thing, but obviously trying to share information, make sure everyone's on the same page. And big credit to Ann for all her efforts to try and keep our division moving forward. Timekeeping, again, anybody that's tried to do timekeeping, thank you. That was another thing early on that was changing by the day and was very difficult to try to manage. We obviously developed, as time went on, a lot of protocols. There was a lot better guidance in terms of FAQs. If you were possibly exposed, we had the standard exposure letter, kind of explain the protocols, and so basically contact your doctor. And if you need to quarantine, all those types of things were laid out. We did learn some better ways to disinfect. A lot of the districts have really liked the pressure sprayers, and we did end up getting at one point an electrostatic sprayer. Same thing that DTC was using to disinfect their buses. Unfortunately, the market for some of those things went from being a $180 to $200 item to a $1,200 to $1,400 item. And I'm referencing the electrostatic sprayers, not the pressure sprayers. Luckily, were in abundance, and it worked well for us. So again, early on, high level of concern and vigilance and trying to follow best practices. As time went on, a level of fatigue set in. It really became challenging and took a lot of discipline to keep doing all the steps you need to take, whether it's washing hands, wearing a mask, social distancing. A couple other observations. Telecommuting does work for some people and some teams. I definitely did notice some folks are continuing to work longer hours, so you have to really set your schedule and be disciplined. And appreciate getting extra things done, but don't want to see people get burned out either. Virtual meetings can work well. Just have to remember to unmute and figure out who's echoing, and then you're usually in pretty good shape. We did notice some improved turnaround times on some activities. Less travel time needed, fewer field meetings. I know for some of the functions that I do, electronic signatures have been wonderful, and I hope we keep doing that. One of the districts even noticed some improved efficiencies around mowing. I think some of that stems from the split shifts at the yards, less traffic on the roads, less places you want to be for a lunch break, things like that. It ended up helping out. On the downside, I will say, I do come into the office a percentage of time, and I think there are times when you have to find that balance of office time versus telecommuting. And you can kind of lose some of the synergy if you don't have some FaceTime or you bump into people sometimes. So that was everything I had. Just want to say again, thank you for the opportunity. And again, looking forward to better days here soon in 2021.
Thank you, Brian. We don't have any questions at this time. So if you want to stick around in case any does pop in, that's fine. Sure. So with that, we're going to move on to we're going to stay with an M&O and turn it over to Taylor King, who's going to provide us with an update on statewide facilities.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taylor King, and I help facilitate the capital improvements program for M&O facilities. Not quite. So here's a graphic showing the breakdown of our major projects across the state. We have a good spread. We'll jump right in. So the much anticipated Bear Administration Building demo and reconstruction kicked off in May of this past year. Kudos to Skip Sanders for all his efforts securing temporary office space and organizing the move for over 50 employees. We expect to move back in the spring of 2020. Secretary Majeski and former Secretary Cohen participated. They took full advantage of the opportunity to participate in the demolition ceremony. The foundation work for the 24,000 square foot office required the removal of hundreds of cubic yards of buried concrete debris, 34 individual spread footings, and 560 feet of foundation wall. Placing the 220 cubic yard slab started at 3 a.m. and was completed by 7 p.m. Contractor utilized the laser guided vibratory screed to make sure our slope and elevation tolerances were met. The finished building will have a naturally lit entrance and lobby with skylight, enhanced building envelope, workspaces with daylit views, and a second floor rooftop patio. North District Headquarters site, also known as Chapman Yard, received extensive improvements this year. It was constructed around the same time as I-95 in the 1960s. Prior to this project, almost half of the structures on site were original and outlived their usefulness. Our operation has grown extensively over the years, and this yard was long overdue for the investment. The 7-acre site expansion includes a crew quarters, several equipment storage sheds, a 5,000-ton fabric salt barn, and improve brine storage and operations. A big shout out to Jeff Armstrong for doing a great job of managing 5 different GCs to get all this work done in under 20 months. It was very impressive. This year we'll focus on power redistribution. The goal is to decrease the number of electrical services on site and provide whole site backup during emergencies to support our operations on I-95. Over the summer, DOT's North 1 and 2 moved into their new office across the street. Office features large conference rooms, smaller breakout conference rooms, and open modern workspaces for our staff. St. George's Maintenance Yard also became fully operational this year. Here's a nice shot of the yard with Roth and St. George's Bridges in the background. Like North District, the 22-acre site features a robust crew quarters, modern maintenance shop, equipment storage sheds, and a 5,000-ton salt barn, as well as a large material storage pad. The Middletown Maintenance Shop saw significant progress this year after overcoming multiple permitting hurdles. You can see here the original undersized brick maintenance shop in the center of the frame. The new shop is being constructed in the back of the parking lot there. The new maintenance shop features 3 maintenance bays with overhead lube reels and crane, a heated wash bay, and significantly increased parts storage. The scope also includes doubling the size of the existing wash pad, installing a new galvanized steel wash platform, and improved parking and site lighting. Magnolia Maintenance Yard has seen a lot of development over the last 10 years. This year, we were able to move forward with the last major project scheduled for the site, which was converting the site from on-site septic to public sewer. This project includes 1 new pump station, retrofitting 2 existing pump stations, and 1,400 feet of force main. This project ties into the new Caesar Rodney School down the street, which continues to force main another 2,000 feet down Briarbush Road. Like Middletown, the Gravel Hill Shop was a long-awaited project that came to fruition this year. The shop will have 6 maintenance bays to support the 2 maintenance areas that work out of the yard. The shop includes overhead lube reels, gantry crane, and a heated slab. Kudos to Randir Sharma for doing a great job collaborating with South District and the contractor to resolve issues quickly. Randir also recently became a citizen of the United States, so congratulations, Randir. Looking forward to the next few years, so long as funding remains where it is. We hope to continue with our theme of implementing projects across the state. We hope to refurbish and replace aging satellite salt barns in North and Canal District, continue to develop concepts for the North District headquarters maintenance shop, create a new master plan for the Berry Yard, provide permanent facilities for Area 26 at the Boyd's Corner maintenance yard, improve humidity conditions or remediate humidity issues at the Dover Sign Shop, construct a new maintenance shop at the Harrington Maintenance Yard, and our big one this year, the Georgetown Administration Building addition and renovation. So with that, thank you for your time, and hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Have any questions at this time? Yeah. So with that, we'll move on to our next presenter. Jamie Pavona of the Environmental Stewardship Section is here to present on the department's efforts to enhance pollinator habitats.
My name is Jamie, as John said. I'm here to talk about pollinators and the work that DelDOT is doing to try to support them. Yes. Oh, sorry. I forgot I had to click this button. Okay, so first off, I wanted to talk about why we care about pollinators. So they're not just pretty. More than half of the world's diet of fats and oils come from animal pollinated plants, including palm oil, canola oil, and sunflower oil. And then more than 150 food crops, including almost all fruit and grain crops, depend on pollinators. So they are important for reasons other than just looking at them.
The USDA estimates that pollination-dependent crops are worth more than $10 billion per year. So they do help stimulate the economy. Flowering plants produce breathable oxygen, and pollinators are key to the reproduction of these flowering plants. And flowering plants also help to purify water and prevent erosion through roots that hold the soil in place. So the water cycle depends on plants to return moisture to the atmosphere, and then plants depend on the pollinators to help them reproduce. So one specific pollinator that I think everyone knows about is the monarch butterfly. This is a graphic of the population decline that the monarch has experienced over the past 25 years. So the most recent overwintering numbers are from 2019 to 2020. And this number of 2.83 hectares has fell 53% from the 2018 to 2019 winter season. And the most recent overwintering season from 2020 to 2021, those numbers are not released yet. For the eastern population, the western population has seen a decline, so we're not super optimistic that the numbers for the eastern side are going to be much better. The monarch is an iconic pollinator. However, it is not the only population that has suffered serious losses. Several species of butterflies, moths, and native bees are in decline due to invasive pests and diseases, pesticide and herbicide exposure, loss of habitat, and climate change. So there are several pollinators that are in decline, and as I said before, they are important to help make the world function as we're used to it functioning, so we care that these populations are declining. So much so that the monarch butterfly was petitioned to be listed on the Endangered Species Act in 2014, and in December 2020, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service made a decision on that listing, and they decided that listing the monarch was warranted but precluded. So there is evidence that a listing for a monarch butterfly is necessary, but the Fish and Wildlife Service does not have enough staff or time or resources right now to deal with it. There's other more imperiled species that they need to focus their time on. So because of that, every year, the Fish and Wildlife Service must now review the monarch population data and make a decision each year until the monarch is either listed as threatened or is listed as not warranted. So there's still not really a clear answer on whether or not the monarch will be listed in the future. So DelDOT cares about pollinators because a lot of habitat that pollinators rely on is found in our roadsides. So that is milkweed, flowering plants, and little shrubs that bees can nest in. So milkweed is required for monarch butterflies to reproduce because the females lay eggs on the milkweed leaves, and then once they're hatched, the larvae feed on those leaves for 2 weeks. So one reason why DOTs all over the country are particularly interested in pollinators and the monarch, other than just caring about them, is that this specific plant that is necessary for monarchs to reproduce is found in our roadsides and in our rights of way. There's 3 different types of it. There's hundreds of different types, but there's 3 different types in Delaware. There's swamp butterfly and common milkweed. Common milkweed is what you typically see on your roadsides. Over the past several years, DelDOT has worked to adjust our mowing practices in certain areas to minimize impacts to pollinator habitat. So this includes not mowing during the time of year when pollinators are present. So focusing on mowing sometime before April 1st and sometime after the first frost of the year, which is usually around mid-November. Over the last couple of years, DelDOT has been focusing on improving our interdepartmental collaboration in regards to pollinators. So this has included teamwork across all of the sections listed here. So the Environmental Stewardship Office, which is where I work, and then real estate, roadside environmental, and maintenance and operations. So we've all kind of been starting to just
communicate more with one another about what it is we're doing and what the best ways to do those things are. So this summer, actually, myself and Robbie Brown from real estate worked together to identify several locations throughout the state that have pollinator meadow potential. And this task has been particularly difficult because Delaware has much narrower roadsides compared to Midwestern states. And several of our larger excess parcels that we own are forested, so they're really not suitable for pollinators. So narrowing down those areas in Delaware that are like large and basically just field is pretty hard to do. So we're still working to identify those areas given the resources that we're working with in Delaware. We've also been working closely to improve how we keep track of and monitor all of our pollinator sites. So especially because the number of sites among different sections is growing. So as I said, I worked with real estate this summer about something pretty specific, but prior to that, real estate had developed a few pollinator sites. We in the ESO have our own pollinator sites. Roadside Environmental has their own Enhancing Delaware Highways program. So we're trying to find a way to bring all of these programs together and just manage them more efficiently. So our end goal is to eventually have a GIS map of all the sites with details like acreage, monitoring info, what mocycle the site is on, species present, and just any other relevant details about the site that we would quickly need to know, and it would all be in one place, so we could just all figure it out. And then lastly, as new projects come in, my office has been working to identify areas where we can plant milkweed or wildflowers. So for example, if a project is acquiring excess parcels and maybe the whole parcel is not being used for development of the road, or it's not being used for stormwater, then we are looking at those areas to see if it's feasible to plant milkweed or wildflowers, or even just not mow them and see what grows. Because there are cases where wildflowers and milkweed already exist in the seed bank. And also invasive species can exist in the seed bank. So it's kind of helpful to see what comes up in that first year or two of not mowing it, and then you can manage your site more efficiently. And then, so all of these sections that I mentioned within DelDOT are continuing to work together to improve pollinator habitat throughout the state. And we are also, as I stated earlier, with the Fish and Wildlife Service, potentially listing the monarch in the next couple of years. We are working on monitoring that situation because it does have implications for DelDOT that I'm not going to get into today because I would be here all day. This is just an example of roadside milkweed. Don't really have much to say about it other than that's what you can look for if you're curious what it looks like or where it is and how it shows up. It's usually in clusters. It's not usually this tall in our roadsides unless you're on, I don't know, like a local way back road, but typically like on the main roads like highways SR1, it's going to be a lot shorter and it's going to be like a paler green because it's fresh. So next we are going to talk about Dove's Nest Pollinator Meadow, which is the first early successional habitat mitigation site that DelDOT created. It was a result of a partnership between DelDOT, DNREC, and the Delaware Forest Service. And it was also part of the US 301 project. So originally it was slated for reforestation, I think, and DNREC came to us and asked us if we could turn it into this meadow instead, because there have been declines in rare birds and different things in Middletown just due to the crazy development that it has seen over the past 50 or so years. And at first we didn't think it would be possible, but with some more research, we figured out that it could be possible. So this is the site. It's 43 acres and it's planted with predominantly native wildflowers that bloom across the growing season to provide pollinators with readily available nectar sources. So we handpicked certain species that we knew would support pollinators throughout the whole season. Anytime they need food, whether it's April or September, they can go to this site and there will be something blooming there. So we also designed this sign that you see on your screen for the site, and the sign shop graciously helped us make and install it. And if you want to see it close up, you can see a smaller version of the sign hanging outside of the Georgetown / Millsboro conference room on the second floor of the DelDOT admin building. So that was fun to design that. Okay, so still on Dove's Nest, this is just some background into how we created the site. So in order to do so, we needed to perform a prescribed burn, which was performed by the Delaware Forest Service in the winter of 2019. These people are experienced experts with prescribed burns, and they could not perform the burn until a day when the weather conditions, such as wind and humidity, were perfect. So it took a little longer to get us all out there and do it, but once they did it, they did a really good job. And what the burn does is it helps to prepare the site for planting by suppressing invasive and woody species, which you don't want in your pollinator site. So to keep the site in early successional habitat indefinitely, which is not like naturally found in nature, we do have to do a prescribed burn every 3 to 5 years, just to manage those woody species and other species that are going to naturally grow in nature. So after the prescribed burn, we did a wildflower seeding. We partnered with DenRec, and the site was planted with, like I said, native wildflowers, including partridge pea, orange coneflower, black and brown-eyed Susan, swamp common, and butterfly milkweed, and several other species that are native to Delaware and benefit pollinators. So, like I said, we partnered with DenRec to plant the site because they have experience with successful wildflower meadows. They have a couple throughout the state already that have been around for years. And a seed drill was used to plant these, which is another reason why we partnered with DenRec, because they had the most qualified person to use this type of machinery. And what the seed drill does is it sows seeds at precise intervals and depths into the soil to ensure an even distribution of planting. And then in addition to wildflowers, clover fire breaks were planted throughout the site for future prescribed burns, and the fire breaks help to stop the burn from escaping the unit. Okay, so monitoring Dove's Nest is required to be monitored throughout the year. We are required to monitor the site 3 times in the winter and 3 times in the summer for birds, and that helps us measure the success of the site. We also voluntarily monitor the site in the summer during peak vegetation to measure milkweed density. And as I said, obviously milkweed is good for monarchs, so we do want that, and we did plant it, so we do want that to show up at the site eventually. However, milkweed can take a couple years to establish after it's planted, so we have not seen it in high numbers at the site yet. While we're monitoring, we also write down any other observations that we make, such as what kind of flowering plants are blooming, if there's any invasive species, and any pollinators. These are all photos that I've taken from Dove's Nest or other pollinator sites that I've monitored over the years at DelDOT. So far at Dove's Nest specifically, the primary wildflowers that have popped up are black-eyed Susan and partridge pea, which is pretty typical for year 1 of a meadow. There are invasive species present at the site that we are monitoring and determining the best path forward for eradication. But they are likely something that we're just going to have to deal with for as long as the meadow exists. Like I said earlier, there's already an existing seed bank at most fields. So while the burn helps to kind of suppress that, it doesn't eliminate that issue completely. So there's already things at this site that were there before we planted it, and they're popping up now, and we just have to deal with that. And then due to the proximity of the meadow to the forest, sweet gums are encroaching on the site. And we worked with Roadside Environmental and a consultant this year to go out and spray the unwanted sweet gums. Sweet gums are a tree, sorry. I just assume everyone knows that, but I know if you don't, they're a tree. If we let this issue go unmanaged, then a large portion of the site will begin to switch to forest instead of early successional habitat. So that's why we kind of wanted to get it handled year one. They're not gone yet. It's a pretty large portion of the site that they're kind of overtaking, but we know about it and we're working on it to make sure that the site stays successful. And then lastly, something super exciting that I worked on for over a year now. Before I say anything about this pollinator license plate, I need to emphasize that the legislation is not passed yet, so it's not available at the DMV. Do not contact them about it. If you have questions, please direct them to me. Don't call the DMV asking about a pollinator license plate. I hope I made that very clear. Please don't call them. So anyway, like I said, DelDOT's Environmental Stewardship Office, myself, Christy Bonewell, we worked with Senator Hansen to come up with a pollinator license plate in 2019. We worked together with her, the DMV, and the Native Species Commission, and then an illustrator to create a license plate that features all native wildflowers and pollinators. Due to COVID, the legislation was delayed, but thankfully, I think it was January. Yes, in January, the Senate Bill 23, which is the pollinator license plate legislation, was finally approved. And now it's been sent to the House for consideration. So, like I said, not passed yet. It has passed in the Senate. Because it has not been approved yet, I'm not showing a full photo of the plate, just in case, God forbid, anything happens and it doesn't get approved. But I did put a little snippet. Sorry, I know I'm pointing to this, but nobody can see me. You're just looking at your screens. This is a snippet of the left side of the plate. So it features a monarch butterfly, milkweed, a ruby-throated hummingbird, tall sunflowers, and a red-spotted purple butterfly. Those are all native to Delaware. There are species on the right side of the plate too. And then the plate will also say, support pollinators at the top and plant native species at the bottom. And not only do I think that the plate is beautiful, but all the extra funds made from the sale of it will be used for pollinator-related work, such as wildflower and milkweed plantings, invasive/woody species control, anything else that we need done in terms of pollinator work. So just stay tuned for that. Like I said, it's not passed, but when/if it becomes available, you can reach out to me. If you have any questions, just contact me. This is my email. And just a quick shout out to Darren Calloway, Brian Urbanik, and Robbie Brown, because they have been a lot of help in coordinating all of our pollinator efforts. So that's it, the end. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jamie.
There's no questions.
I don't have any questions at this time. All right.
Okay.
Feel free to email Jamie if you do have a question. All right, last but not least, Josh McCluskey is here to present an update on DelDOT's drone program.
Thank you for having us to talk about the update for DelDOT UAV drone program. I'm Joshua McCluskey. I'm a UAV pilot. I work in the survey section. I wanted to say a quick, brief thing. I reached out to all the pilots and they added their input into this presentation. So some of it's directly from their email that they sent me, and I copy paste it and put it right in there. So I don't want to take credit for all of it when they had their own input. So away we go. These are the active pilots right now. I pulled this from their air data programming. It's Alistair Probert. I had to find out how to say his last name earlier today, so I would not mess it up. Bruce Caballero, Chris Marsh, Dan Sturgeon, Dan Thompson, Dwayne Day, myself, Joshua McCluskey, Kyle Wyatt, Mike Rivera, Nelson Kesselring, Robbie Brown, Stuart McGee, Warren Ziegler, and Brian Wooders. Currently, we have in our program, we have the Mavic 2, we have the Mavic 2 Zoom, the Matrice 210, the Inspire 1, the Phantom 4, and a Mavic Air, and I forgot to put on here, I think Alistair has a Mavic Air 2 as well. Can I go back one? There we go. Right now, those other drones from Mavic, from DJI, are Chinese drones. These are the first American drones we have in our fleet. The first is the Skydio 2. We got that free from the Skydio company through a ERP program, emergency response program, that the department would initiate this drone into the field immediately. The main thing about this particular drone is the flight time. The flight time is about 15 to 17 minutes. Most other drones are about 25. So this drone will be mainly used for bridge inspection, and it's a drone that has artificial intelligence enough to miss certain objects, large objects, nothing like a wire or a small tree branch, but it will go directly around trees. I have a video of it in action a bit later. The Untitled Evo 2 is another American-made drone. It has capability of flying for 27 minutes. I'm going to read this. Huge difference between this drone and any other drones. A small black self-powered box with 2 antennas on it. The unit has an HDMI network output cable, and it receives a video directly from the drone up to several miles away in theory. What it means is that box can be placed somewhere else completely separate from the pilot's location and put video out to a TV monitor, computer, or laptop with zero effort. Also has a built-in battery with a simple USB cable. I directly going to tell you, I stole that from Alistair's email that he sent. I didn't tell him I was going to do that, but I did. Because I want everyone to understand we are getting American drones, and this Untitled Evo 2 has the best capability for what Alistair's group does and what Traffic does when they fly for long periods of time, where the Skydio just frankly won't have that same capability. Training. All pilots are Part 107 licensed. They would take a test through the FAA. Passed the DelDOT UAV training through Dwayne Day. All trained in the same way for efficiency, and must stay active flying for at least 3 full batteries every 3 months. So they have to fly continuously for 3 batteries every 3 months, or like 1 battery every month. Air Data is a program that the department utilizes. It provides flight information, flight path, ability to send out video links, tracks UAV battery and usage, and flight weather conditions. Should be able to hit again. It also does flight tracking, flight speed, manages battery percentage, and joysticks. So this is a little a flight that I took at I-95. That is the Blue Rock Stadium. It shows you the sticks that are being used. I'm actually flying it. It shows the battery, and it shows every second of what's happening with radio signal and all the battery cells voltage. I could probably spend about 20 or 30 minutes, more like an hour, talking about what Air Data can do for us. But the main thing is that it also be able to send that link out to anyone, and then they put a code in, and then you could view that link, what we're seeing on the UAV, on your phone, on a tablet, anything of that nature. We have an indoor training facility. I'll show you where. So you start right at the bottom left corner there. You go through the tunnel. You go through those signs and out the sign to that table. Off the table, you go towards those buckets, and you have to identify what's on the buckets and then fly and land on top. Then you come around, you got to go through these signs or through that little tunnel. You come back around through that tunnel, then you got to go and they turn these fans on. While the fans are hitting you, you have to be able to identify what's in the buckets. Then if you're savvy enough, you can go up the steps and come right out I'll be honest with you, I tried it. It did not go so well. If you can make it out of that, or you can just abort all you want, you go through the bus and then out the bus door and back where you came from. From what we understand, this is the most extensive indoor training facility in the DOTs. That's a larger shot. Through traffic, they cover events such as the food bank, COVID-19 vaccinations. They also do NASCAR, Firefly, traffic, and work for law enforcement. In these events, they utilize the drone bus, and they also have a gator. This should be a 4-minute video, so brace yourselves. That video was taken by Alistair, Robbie Brown, and myself. I just edited it together. They were not flying that fast. I had sped up the video just to get more footage in there. We also fly for ENS, for project evaluations, monitoring project status, and documenting project conditions. We make a schedule at the beginning of the month, and we fly Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And if it rains, sometimes we'll go out on Thursday and Friday. But we go up and down the states to various projects from Ting's group and John's group to fly for ENS. We also do drone deploy mapping. So this is a 3D rendition of a stockpile. Through this software, we can pull volumes for stockpiles, areas, and if you look really close, that is a point cloud, which we can export that out of this programming and into MicroStation. And here is a video from construction that we did for Parkside Boulevard. I'd like to thank all the drone pilots for all their hard work. I guess I missed that slide. I also had a slide in there for, it's okay, a slide in there for the Skydio, but I guess I didn't save it, didn't come in. The Skydio, I took it to 495 and I flew it right through a bridge abutment, and it was really neat. But I had sent it to as many important people as I was allowed to send it to. So it's out there if anyone wants to see it. I'd like to thank my supervisors, Andy, Shanez, Monroe, and all those folks that allow us to fly Monday through Wednesday and to do ENS and construction work with Mark Buckaloo and our supervisors, and thank everyone in the drone program. And I really want to thank Lennon Knox because Sean has left and went to work for Army Corps of Engineers. So Lennon Knox came in and started visually observing with me. He's been with me for about a month flying. He's also a tech forward just like I am. And he's taking his test on Monday, part 107. So good luck to him. And just thank everyone. And if you need any drone work or UAV work or need flights, just call Joshua McCluskey or Alistair or Wayne Day, especially for any construction projects, any engineers, or anyone that needs work. We want to be able to provide a service with the drone program. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Joshua. There's several expressions of the same thing. No, it's no questions, but thank you. Yeah, for your services. Yeah, because no real questions at this time, but everybody is appreciative of the drones that you are offering. So, all
right, thank you.
All right. Okay. So with that, we're approaching the end of the day. I want to say a special thank you to all the presenters. I think we had a great program, a very diverse program over these past 2 days. These presentations should be on the Design Resource Center by the end of next week, along with the video. I think there's already a YouTube video out there from yesterday, but the other one should follow. Next, I'd like to thank Todd Revis and his team for helping us out with all the technology. And Sandy Wolf from the T-Squared Center with the registration, as well as, these evaluations that are going to be coming out today. And lastly, Bob and Danny from my team, thank you guys for all the logistics. Pulling this together was something totally different. It was a challenge, but I think we did pretty good, all things considered. So, and one final reminder, all the evaluation forms are due by Friday, February 19th, close of business. And lastly, thank you all for attending. It's been fun, and hope to see you in person next year.